The United States government is in possession of intact and partially intact non-human craft and the remains of the pilots who flew them. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's testimony given under oath to the U.S. Congress. But if the U.S. is hiding the ultimate secret, why are nations across the globe suddenly breaking their silence? I'm Josh, and on today's episode of the Infographic Show, we'll be asking, what do governments know about aliens? The wall of silence surrounding aliens wasn't just cracked in February 2026. It had been shattered. Barack Obama appeared on a podcast and was asked about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. The former president dropped a line that went viral within minutes. "They're real, but I haven't seen them." 7 words that changed everything. He clarified that there is no massive underground facility in Area 51, suggesting that any enormous conspiracy would have had to been hidden even from the president. While Obama later backtracked on social media, citing the vastness of the universe and a lack of contact during his own term, the damage to the secret had been done. Just days later, President Trump fired back, publicly accusing Barack Obama of leaking classified information. But what happened next caught Washington and the world off guard. In a dramatic escalation, Trump announced a sweeping declassification effort, promising to release a massive trove of government files to the public. But while the politicians argued, one man was already trying to burn the whole system down. David Grush wasn't a household name, but in 2023, the former U.S. Air Force officer and intelligence official took advantage of new whistleblower protections to tell Congress that the U.S. has been aware of non-human activity since the 1930s. In June 2023, an article detailing claims by Grush of an elaborate government conspiracy regarding aliens started to circulate. Many of the claims were unverified, so top outlets initially refused to publish it. Grush's claims were explosive, that the government not only had a program investigating UAPs, but that it had a top-secret retrieval program, including any non-human pilots. According to Grush, the government wasn't afraid to commit crimes to cover up the truths, with both white-collar crime and murder being on the table. It was the secret the government wanted to keep hidden. Grush's story got wilder when he spoke to a French newspaper. He suggested the UAPs might come from other dimensions, and some were as large as football fields. He added that there was evidence of aggressive and hostile activity by the aliens, as well as the crashed UAPs had been transferred to defense contractors for research. The uproar grew so intense that Grush would be called before the U.S. Congress a month later. There he repeated and elaborated on his claims, stating that the U.S. had non-human biologics in its custody, though he didn't specify if they were alive or dead. The controversy sparked calls for a formal organization to investigate these astonishing reports. But the government didn't need to create a new office to investigate these claims, because it already exists. It's called the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, and it's tucked away inside the Department of Defense. On paper, this agency exists to investigate UFO sightings. In reality, it acts as a gatekeeper. Every year, thousands of reports flood in, more than 2,000 in just the first half of 2025, in the United States alone. The agency's first job isn't to prove aliens, it's to filter. And most cases don't survive the filter. Wildlife mistaken for craft, weather balloons drifting off course, commercial and military aircraft, even strange but explainable local phenomena. Case after case gets ruled out, only about 2 to 5% of sightings remain unexplained. That tiny fraction is where things get interesting, because that is what this agency is really built for, and unlike any version before it, this one has access to technology and intelligence capabilities its predecessors never had. The question is, what are they actually finding? The official line from AARO is that they have no empirical evidence of extraterrestrials. Or is that what they want people to believe? UAP believers are quick to assume that this agency is continuing the elaborate cover-up that's been going on for decades. Meanwhile, skeptics assume Grush is simply a rogue agent who is looking to sow discord. And a big part of the reason for the ambiguity is because the U.S. has been incredibly tight-lipped about what it shares with the public. This is a big part of why Area 51 has been such a subject of fascination. All we know is that it's top secret. There's no evidence that it has anything to do with aliens. But there's also little evidence that it doesn't. Could this change everything that we thought we knew about the Earth? In total, 7 countries, the USA, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, the Soviet Union, Brazil, and Australia, have their own programs investigating sightings. And that is just the ones we know of. These programs are highly secretive. At most, the public will get vague details, and if anything too explosive was to be revealed, the government would scramble to hush it up. But the era of tinfoil hats is in the past. The conversation has moved from internet forums to the Oval Office. Countries are being more open about their study of UAPs. France has been at the forefront of research for decades now. The organization GAIPAN, their Unidentified Aerospace Phenomena Research and Information Group, is a part of the French Space Agency. It's basically the French government's scientific detective agency for the sky, investigating reports of objects both foreign and unknown. And it is surprisingly transparent. Since 2007, the agency has been posting its archives online for the public, and they are quickly analyzed by skeptical eyes. 28% of sightings were unexplained. Over time, that dropped to 3%. But that small number is where things get really interesting. Most reports end the same way, inconclusive. But one didn't. The COMETA report wasn't an official product of any UAP-aligned government agency. Instead, it came from an independent think tank in 1999, dedicated to studying extraterrestrials. That means that it approached the data differently, likely more open to the possibility that some sightings were genuine, but it wasn't careless. The nonprofit collected reports of UFO incidents from over 60 years and analyzed them from a perspective of potential threats to national defense. Their findings were eye-raising. 5% of incidents could not be attributed to any natural or human-made events. This report was published by the agency in 2007, and it remains France's most significant contribution to the debate yet. So why haven't the Americans heard about France's key role in the hunt for UFOs? American UFO research has always been colored by the influence of the common man. Most of the stories about the phenomenon have come from people who claim to have seen it streaming over the skies, or have had a close encounter with one of the aliens. It is terrifying and exciting. France, in contrast, has always maintained a very scientific approach to things. There aren't too many well-publicized reports of UFO incidents coming out of the country. This isn't just a local oddity, it is a global mystery. Yet, strangely, it rarely feels that way. If you like these deep dives, then make sure to like, share, and subscribe before the government silences us. France had the cold data, but Brazil had something much more terrifying: physical casualties. Brazil has been chasing down UAPs since the 1970s. In 1977, several UAP sightings were reported on the Brazilian island of Colares, and some residents even claimed that the strange lights on the ship had scarred them. After the panic grew, the local mayor requested help from the Air Force. They delivered in more ways than one. The operation, known as Operação Prato, was conducted over several months, and they were able to capture images of the lights. This event created conspiracies about what was actually discovered during this event, and those conspiracy theories went into overdrive 20 years later. Mission leader Captain Urengi gave his first interview about the events. 3 months later, he was seemingly found dead by his own hand. Ufologist Jacques Vallée also claimed that several individuals were killed by microwave-like rays from the objects. He alleged the government covered it up, as well as other bizarre claims, like the objects attacked people, sucking the blood out of them. So why wasn't this worldwide news? There are plenty of spectacular UFO claims around the world, but a general rule is that the more spectacular, the less direct link there is to the events. The terrible night that supposedly took place in 1977 was poorly documented and classified when it happened. There are few current records of the supposed casualties, and the death of Captain Urengi continues to raise conspiracies. No one knows exactly how Jacques Vallée is connected to the event, if he is connected at all. We don't know how he obtained the information. And if he really has classified secrets the government would never want released, how is he even able to speak about them publicly? But the rumors that something horrible had taken place continued to swirl around the mysterious incident. So Brazil's government took a very unusual tack. As of 2010, Brazil's government officially decreed that all UAP sightings should not only be recorded but submitted directly to the National Archives for public access. This has made Brazil one of the most fascinating hotspots for UAP research. It gives enthusiasts the chance to study events like the 1986 Night of the UFOs in detail, where hundreds of craft were spotted over Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and other locations. The Air Force was eventually scrambled to pursue them. The strange phenomena were never explained. However, the U.S. remains the most common hotspot for UAP sightings, so it's no surprise that its closest neighbor has been keeping an eye on the skies as well. Canada has been quietly investigating UAPs for decades, almost as long as the United States. Its first major investigations date back to the 1950s, but much of that work remained classified until 2025. That year, the Canadian government decided to make its efforts public under a new initiative, Sky Canada Project. Led by the Office of the Chief Science Advisor of Canada, the foundation wasn't just about transparency. It was to review decades of data, update investigative practices, and bring the latest scientific tools to the study of UAP sightings across the country. For the first time, Canadians could see how their government was approaching the mystery and what it was learning from the skies. The most recent major UAP sighting took place in North York, Ontario in 2014. Where a string of diagonal flashing lights in the sky were witnessed by several people. Canada is taking this phenomenon seriously. The Sky Canada Project isn't just about releasing past reports, it is building a system. The goal is to collate sightings, establish an official reporting network, and develop theories based on real data. There is a reason for this scientific approach, one that differs from the US. Much of Canada is sparsely populated. That isolation makes certain regions potentially vulnerable to incursions, whether terrestrial or extraterrestrial. This helps explain why so many nations are investing more heavily in UAP research. Even if they never confirm alien life, monitoring the skies is a clear matter of national security, and Canada is making sure no anomaly goes unnoticed. There's been a new hotspot for UAP sightings in recent years, the skies of Japan. Alien watchers have seen strange orbs streaking through the sky, and this isn't the first time. In the 1970s, two boys claimed to have met an alien, Japan's most famous sighting. But the most recent sightings center around objects behaving in ways that don't match that of either planes or stars. And it sounds a lot like the sightings over in the United States. All these sightings mean it's impossible to keep them quiet. For the first time, this isn't just the domain of conspiracy theorists and sci-fi buffs anymore. More people and more countries are publicly acknowledging that UAP sightings are becoming increasingly common. Some are even recognizing that they don't have the answers. What does this mean for humanity? There's a growing consensus that something is out there and we need to learn more about it. People who have been chasing answers for decades are feeling vindicated, and many are watching the skies for the next big development. But this raises a chilling question. Is the government hiding the truth to protect us, or are they simply powerless? If there are aliens out there, it would be one of the biggest news events the world has ever seen. It would change the way we view the world and everything in it. It would also raise some terrifying prospects. It's unlikely that there's any life in our solar system due to the hostile landscapes of the other planets. That means if alien life forms have visited us, they would have had to come from much further away, and we would pretty much be at their mercy. If an alien species had the capability to visit the Earth from other solar systems, their technology would likely be so far beyond us that we wouldn't even have a chance at fighting back. It would be less akin to an interstellar war and more like a fishing expedition, and we are the fish, which might be the biggest reason the government is covering it up. Alien life could have the potential for total societal collapse. We've seen how people react to events like terror attacks or pandemics. There's always a rush to blame, a rush to hoard, and eventually a series of conspiracies that damage the social fabric for years to come. The storm of controversy that would erupt over aliens being confirmed could dwarf all of that, and not just between the citizens. It could create chaos between countries as well. David Grush made one big claim that got people speculating in particular, and that was the US is in possession of both aliens and their spaceships. This could create a type of arms race that the world has never seen. Rival countries could try to reverse engineer alien technology in order to win the battle for the next superweapon. But there is a second theory, and one that is even scarier than a global conspiracy. What if the governments aren't hiding the truth because they have control, but because they have absolutely none? If these are actually alien life forms paying a visit to the skies of Earth, that would mean an unknown intelligence is operating in the territory of sovereign nations with impunity, possibly gathering intelligence. Governments can track UAPs, they can study them, but understanding what they want, that is a whole different challenge. If there is a cover-up, they may not be able to keep it going for long. No one is sure what files the Trump administration will be releasing in the aftermath of former President Obama's interview. But whatever comes out, it is going to be closely scrutinized by everyone. After 80 years of silence, the veil of secrecy is finally coming down. Since the infamous 1947 Roswell crash, the US government has been collecting every piece of evidence they can on UAP. This included famous research projects like the Blue Book And while that program officially ended in 1969, the trail didn't stop there. For decades, new sightings and encounters continued quietly, just out of the public eye. But then, something happened that changed everything. In 2017, it was revealed that the government had put in $22 million to a new program to identify aerospace-related threats. And this created a sea change in the way UAPs were viewed, not just by the government, but by the public. No more was this being treated as some sort of science fiction, but as a pressing national security threat. For the first time, the government was treating them not as a conspiracy, but as something tangible. And they wanted answers just as much as anyone. The big change arrived in 2023 with the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act. This was an amendment to the 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, and for the first time, it created a system for declassifying government records related to UAP sightings, as well as to hypothetical discoveries of alien technology or biological specimens. This was a bipartisan legislation, and it got people hoping. But it might not be enough to satisfy everyone. We're on the verge of what might be the biggest reveals in the history of UAP research. But if the reveals fall short of what some people expect, they're likely to simply claim that the government is still holding out on us. After all, if the government has been keeping secrets for this long in the name of national security, they can easily continue to do the same. So the fight is likely to go on, no matter what the government does. The government of the United States, and the world with it, has been researching UAPs for more than half a century now, creating a tight-lipped approach to things that has filled people with suspicion. Now, for the first time, they seem to be shifting toward transparency. But once people are convinced a conspiracy exists, it's nearly impossible to undo that. No matter how much the government reveals about aliens or unexplained phenomena, skepticism remains. People will always suspect there is something being hidden, and they'll keep speculating, they'll keep digging, and often they'll be looking in the wrong places, chasing shadows while the real story quietly unfolds elsewhere. And that might be exactly what the government wants, because the only thing better than hiding something from the public is giving them something else to look at. For 60 years, we've been searching the stars for advanced civilizations, hoping to hear something. But now, that's changing. Hi, Josh here, and on today's episode of the Infographics Show, we're explaining why scientists are done listening for aliens. They're hunting them. In 2021, a team at Harvard University officially launched the Galileo Project. The mission was to scan the universe for anomalous objects, and their secret weapon is AI. The hunt for alien life began in 1960 with Project Ozma, when astronomers trained the 85-foot Green Bank telescope on nearby stars, listening for signals from other civilizations. A year later, Frank Drake created the Drake equation, a cosmic math game estimating how many intelligent civilizations might exist in our galaxy. By 1963, the Arecibo Observatory, a dish 1,000 feet across, was scanning the water hole, a specific frequency band between 1,420 and 1,720 megahertz, hoping to intercept a message from the stars. In theory, it was a good idea, but that's all it ever was. Radio searching relies on intent. The search relies on the idea that alien civilizations are intentionally sending a high-power signal straight at the Earth 24/7 for centuries. If the transmitter sweeps by, then the astronomers have only seconds to catch it. If they're looking at the wrong star at the wrong second, it's gone. It was always a long shot. The Milky Way contains anywhere from 100 to 400 billion stars. Even with the most advanced arrays, like the Alien Telescope Array in California, the search covers a tiny portion of the sky. And there's another problem. The sensors are blinded by the Earth's own noise. GPS, military radar, TV broadcasts, the search is drowning in local interference. In 2020, astronomers thought that a signal had been caught from Proxima Centauri. It was a perfect candidate, a narrow-band signal at 982 megahertz. It shifted frequency in a way that suggested it was coming from a moving planet. For a brief moment, scientists believed that there was life. But that excitement didn't last. The signal wasn't from aliens at all. It was just everyday electronics accidentally combining to mimic a cosmic message. Essentially, listening for radio waves is incredibly limited and unlikely to succeed. But there was an answer from an unlikely source. In October 2017, Hawaii's Pan-STARRS telescope spotted a strange object breaking all the rules of orbital mechanics. It was cataloged as 1I 2017 U1. It's known as Oumuamua the Scout, and this was no ordinary rock. Unlike typical asteroids, which are roughly round from billions of years of collisions, Oumuamua had a strange elongated shape, estimated to be between 300 and 3,000 feet long and between 35 to 548 feet wide. It was the light curve that gave it away. As it tumbled through space, its brightness changed by a factor of 10 every 7.3 hours. A normal asteroid shifts by a factor of 3 at most. To reach 10, the object had to be extreme, either a flat pancake or a long, thin cylinder. But the shape wasn't the threat. Oumuamua was traveling at 59,000 miles per hour. It wasn't orbiting the sun, it was slicing through our galaxy. Its path shows that it came from beyond the solar system, making it the first known interstellar visitor. And that was when it did something impossible. It accelerated. Normally, a comet speeds up near the sun because its ice boils off, a process known as outgassing. This creates jets that act as thrusters. But Oumuamua had no tail, no coma, the fuzzy envelope of gas and dust around a comet. The Spitzer Space Telescope looked for carbon-based gas. Nothing. Ground-based telescopes looked for dust. Nothing. If it's not gravity and it's not gas, then what's pushing it? Avi Loeb, the former chair of Harvard's astronomy department, had a theory: solar radiation pressure. If an object is less than 0.04 inches thick and very wide, sunlight pushes it like wind on a sail. But nature doesn't make rocks that thin and 100 yards wide. The scientific community scrambled. Attempts were made to explain it away with theories about hydrogen icebergs or dust bunnies, microscopic particles of ice, rock, and metal that cling together. These objects would be invisible to sensors but could still outgas. But hydrogen icebergs are a theoretical concept. For Loeb, the data was the data. Oumuamua was the first hard evidence that the solar system isn't empty, and there is traffic that is simply passing through. And that is where the Galileo project came in. The strategy is to build a global network of all-sky observatories. The first is already active at Harvard. Standard telescopes look at a tiny pinprick of the sky for hours, useless for catching hypersonic unidentified anomalous phenomena or UAP. Galileo sensors watch an entire hemisphere 24/7. Optical cameras with fisheye lenses capture the whole sky in high resolution, enough to resolve surface features from a distance. Coupled with passive infrared sensors, they detect heat from propulsion and atmospheric friction. Now the thing is, the system uses passive audio. It listens for the acoustic signature. So does the object create a sonic boom, or is it silent? Does it emit a hum? This is where the custom AI takes over. The team is training machine learning algorithms to filter the entire sky. Millions of images are fed into the system, including things like birds, drones, and planes, Starlink satellites, weather balloons, and the AI learns the flight characteristics of each. It learns that planes bank when they turn. It learns that birds flap. It learns that a satellite moves in a linear, predictable arc. Once the AI learns the background noise, it deletes it, discarding 99.9% of the data. Only anomalies get flagged. The AI doesn't know what a UFO looks like. It doesn't have a picture of a flying saucer in a database. It just looks for physics that shouldn't exist. It looks for the absence of expected features. But the Galileo project realized that looking up is only half of the battle. If traffic had been passing through the solar system for billions of years, some of it must have crashed. In 2019, Avi Loeb and Amir Siraj gained access to the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies database. This is a catalog of meteors tracked by the U.S. government spy satellites. These satellites are designed to spot nuclear missile launches, so the data on atmospheric entries is extremely accurate. A target was found from January 8, 2014. A meteor roughly 1.5 feet in diameter exploded over the Pacific near Papua New Guinea, but the data was impossible. Known as IM-1, Interstellar Meteor 1, it hit the atmosphere at roughly 28 miles per second, and this reveals clues about its origins. Objects orbiting the sun have a speed limit, and IM-1 broke it. It wasn't trapped by the sun's gravity, it came from deep space. But that was just the beginning. When a meteor hits the atmosphere, it faces a wall of air, building pressure until it explodes. Ram pressure. IM-1 didn't explode until the lower atmosphere, withstanding 194 megapascals of pressure. Out of all of the 273 meteors in the CNEOS catalog, IM-1 was considered to be the toughest meteor on record. And this raises a chilling question. Why was the very first interstellar object ever detected also the toughest material ever seen? Loeb suspected it wasn't a rock at all. The suspicion was that it was a fuselage of a probe. The U.S. Space Command later confirmed in a memo that the trajectory data proved its interstellar origin with 99.999% certainty. That was the green light that astronomers were waiting for. In June 2023, the Galileo project launched a recovery mission. A ship, the Silver Star, was chartered, to sail to the impact zone off the coast of Manus Island. The target area was 6 miles long, the depth was 1.2 miles. The mission was to find the remains of an object the size of a microwave that had vaporized 9 years ago. A magnetic sled was built and lowered on a winch and dragged across the ocean floor, hoping to catch magnetic particles. The hunt was on for spherules. When a meteor or a spaceship burns up, molten material rains down as tiny droplets that harden into perfect spheres in the water. For weeks, all they found was black sludge, volcanic sand, dead plankton, and human debris. The crew worked in shifts, scrubbing the magnets and examining the sludge under microscopes. And then they found them. Tiny metallic marbles less than 0.04 inches in diameter, gold, blue, and brown spheres that stood out against the black volcanic ash. Over 700 of these spherules were collected. They were brought back to Harvard and put under a mass spectrometer. And the results were shocking. Analysis revealed a pattern called BELAU, high levels of beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium. The chemical fingerprint points squarely to Earth, specifically coal ash. The uranium isotopes match our planet exactly. In fact, Loeb's team had to rely on iron isotopes, not uranium, to make the case for an extrasolar origin. This would suggest two possibilities. IM-1 came from a region of the galaxy where the chemistry is fundamentally different, or the material is artificial. Beryllium and lanthanum appear in human alloys for heat resistance and durability, used in aerospace landing gear and heat shields, and uranium is used for fuel. If this was a natural rock, it's a rock unlike any ever cataloged in the history of geology. If it was artificial, the melted fragments of an alien probe might have just been recovered. The implications of IM-1 Oumuamua have fundamentally altered the strategy for the next decade. The Galileo project is planning the next phase, interception. Chile's Vera C. Rubin Observatory uses a 3,200 megapixel camera to scan the entire southern sky every 4 days. At this level of sensitivity, seeing another Oumuamua once a decade is actually a conservative estimate. These interstellar objects might appear even more often than we realize, anywhere from a few per decade to several per year. AI models even suggest millions could be inside Earth's orbit right now, too small for older telescopes to see. And that gives scientists the chance to do the unthinkable. Project Lyra proposes using a probe to chase an incoming interstellar object, but the physics of interception are brutal. Catching an object moving at 60,000 miles per hour requires an enormous change in velocity. Landing on it isn't required, it just needs to get close enough to capture high-resolution photos. But this brings the mission to the ultimate frontier. Let's say the Galileo project succeeds and a probe is found, or a signal is intercepted that is complex enough to be a message. How is communication established? Once that breakthrough happens, the realms of science fiction become real. The chances of finding a live alien civilization might be low, but less than a fraction of a percent of the cosmic neighborhood has been scanned. The Pentagon just dropped its first UFO files, and it includes over 160 documents and never-before-seen videos of unexplained aerial phenomena. And some of the footage genuinely looks hard to explain. Number 16. We begin with one of the shortest clips in the entire batch, lasting just 5 seconds. Blink and you'll miss a dark cigar-shaped object shooting across the frame from left to right. According to the Pentagon's description, this video was captured by an infrared sensor aboard a U.S. military platform in May 2022. It was submitted to the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, by U.S. Central Command, with a report suggesting it could be a possible missile. When the footage is slowed down, that explanation actually starts to make sense. The shape is long and narrow, closely matching a missile, especially as it was filmed over the Middle East. At the same time, UFO supporters point out that the military doesn't usually submit footage like this to the AARO unless there is at least some uncertainty about what it is. In other words, the fact it was even flagged suggests it wasn't immediately and confidently identified. So there's a chance this could have been something else. Number 15. This next video lasts just over a minute in total. It was also captured by U.S. Central Command at some point in 2020 and shared with the AARO. It's worth noting that the original reporter made an edit, pausing the footage at the 10-second mark. They also added a note highlighting a small thermal signature near the top of the frame shown as a white orb. Beyond that, no other changes were made to the footage. After the pause, the video follows the orb as it seems to weave from side to side through the sky at a relatively slow speed. At times it disappears behind redacted sections of the frame, and the operator cycles through different contrast and zoom settings. Despite this, no clear details ever actually emerge. The object just looks like a small sphere of light, with no distinctive features or characteristics whatsoever. Many of the videos in the UFO files are similar to this one, captured on cameras that weren't designed for high-resolution recording. On the other hand, those who believe in aliens could argue that this may very well be some sort of craft from another galaxy, due to its unusual movements and unclear shape. But skeptics just as easily point out that this UAP could be anything from a weather balloon to a random piece of airborne debris, like a wedding lantern drifting away on the breeze. Number 14. Many of the declassified videos take place above bodies of water, just like PR-29. This was captured over the Gulf of Oman in 2024 and submitted to AARO by U.S. Northern Command. It's a short clip at just 21 seconds, but it comes with a separate mission report describing an object with a vertical pole or bar attached to the bottom that seemed to be skimming just above the surface of the water. The person submitting the report also suggests that the UAP might actually be a reflection of something moving beneath the water's surface. That would explain its speed and behavior. The Pentagon itself describes the anomaly as an inverted teardrop that stays mostly centered in the sensor's field of view throughout the clip. It moves in a clean, straight line across the frame with a clear rod-like extension sticking out of its base. UFO enthusiasts argue that this could be an example of a so-called jellyfish UFO. There have been other sightings of this type of unidentified aircraft in the past, but naysayers think it's more likely some sort of balloon, or even a bunch of balloons tied together. They add that the object only seems to be going so fast because of the way that the video was filmed, creating a well-documented visual phenomenon called the parallax effect, which can distort the way we see and interpret moving images. What do you think? Number 13. The next video was captured in North America and was submitted by the Department of the Army. It's almost 2 minutes in length, and it's one of the most recent files, having been captured in 2026. The opening frames show a camera locked onto some sort of object, which seems to be a drone. Suddenly, a white heat signature darts across the screen from the right side to the left. The camera quickly readjusts, trying to track the anomaly, adjusting its field of view in the process. At this point, two distinct heat-like spheres come into view, apparently connected by a single body as they move together in sync. For nearly 2 minutes, the camera tracks the anomaly, zooming in and out, making the spheres appear to shift in size as the perspective changes. Analysts studying the footage have noticed what seems to be some sort of exhaust plume trailing behind the object. That may hint at the true identity of the anomaly. Experts argue that it is some sort of plane, leaving a visible trail behind. The next video, however, isn't quite as conclusive. Number 12. At more than 5 minutes in length, PR-44 is longer than most of the other videos released by the Pentagon. It was filed by the U.S. Central Command and captured in 2020 in an undisclosed location in the Arabian Gulf. While there is no oral or written description of this incident, the Pentagon has provided a detailed commentary. The first 30 seconds are pretty uneventful, but after that, an unidentified object appears. The camera then tracks the anomaly for around 3 minutes, keeping it generally in the center of the frame while adjusting both contrast and zoom levels. Eventually, the camera stops tracking the UAP, which then leaves the frame. The length of this video has drawn attention, with some analysts arguing it wouldn't have been tracked that long unless the operator thought it was genuinely unusual or worth monitoring. Others point out that even with zoom and contrast adjustments, the footage never really sharpens. It just remains a vague white orb, leaving plenty of room for more mundane explanations like a drone or balloon. Number 11. Next, let's take a look at what the Pentagon has labeled PR-36. It's another unresolved UAP captured by an infrared sensor aboard a U.S. military platform at some point in 2020 somewhere in the Middle East. The video was accompanied by a written report which mentioned a solid white object making erratic movements above the water. The footage is heavily redacted with large black boxes obscuring much of the on-screen action. However, we can still make out some sort of anomaly entering the frame from the left side after 5 seconds. The object looks like a small white egg-shaped orb. The operator shifts between the camera settings and seems to lose sight of the object for a moment before locking back onto it. For nearly 2 minutes, the UAP drifts through the sky while the camera struggles to keep it centered. Its speed and direction are hard to pin down since the operator is constantly panning and adjusting to follow it. As the clip goes on, the operator zooms in, making the object appear larger until it drifts out of the top of the frame and the video ends. UFO researchers say the shape is unusual, with no clear wings, fins, or visible propulsion. There's nothing that matches the characteristics of a conventional aircraft. Skeptics, though, note that there's a long list of possibilities, from balloons and lanterns to satellites, drones, and other airborne objects that can easily look unfamiliar on camera. Number 10. File PR-26 was recorded in October 2023 somewhere around the United Arab Emirates. It consists of 43 seconds of footage, with a separate PDF file confirming that a UAP of some description was spotted during a mission. The clip shows a small white mass speeding toward the left side of the frame as the camera struggles to keep up with it. Eventually, the camera stops tracking the object, which darts off out of the picture. Analysts have slowed the footage down and zoomed in to get a better look. Some describe it as a mass of orbs. Others note that it has a bird-like appearance, with clear wing-like features and even a tail, which becomes particularly clear when zoomed in. As a result, opinions on this particular clip are mixed. Some say that it most likely was a bird or even a fixed-wing drone. Others say it could have been some sort of advanced aerodynamically designed alien craft attempting to evade detection. Number 9. Next, another very brief clip with another of those blink and you'll miss it moments, but still one that the US military felt was interesting enough to share. The clip itself, labeled PR-31 and captured in Syria in 2024, shows an aerial view of some sort of structure which could be a residence or even potentially a military building. The video is only 5 seconds in length, and it is the first second that actually matters. It shows a strange visual anomaly darting erratically across the top of the screen before disappearing from view. The anomaly is described by the Pentagon as multicolored, though the original reporter claimed it was more of a misshapen and uneven ball of white light. They added that a kind of light glare or halo effect was produced as it passed by. Skeptics have been quick to write this video off as little more than a lens flare, and that might be the most logical explanation of what happened here. At the same time, people argue that lens flares usually have a more predictable pattern of movement. This one, however, seems to move up and down before it leaves the frame, which could suggest there's more to it. Interestingly, the incident was also captured in 2 more of the videos released by the Pentagon, files PR-32 and PR-33. They both show the same object but from different angles. In video PR-32, we also see a strange flare-like phenomenon with a curved, almost halo-like beam of light at the top of the video before fading from view. PR-33 meanwhile shows the anomaly from above. For a split second, 2 irregular orange shapes flash over the background and then vanish just as quickly. It might be easy enough for skeptics to explain away one visual anomaly, but 3 separate visual phenomena captured on 3 separate cameras, all at the exact same moment, is slightly harder to explain. Some UFO fans argue that this could have been some sort of ultra-fast craft speeding through the area. Number 8. Another of the videos that has sparked debate online is File PR-35, which relates to an unresolved UAP report from Greece in October 2023. An accompanying mission report described the sight of a small and circular UAP that was flying close to the surface of the ocean. We see the unidentified object just a couple of seconds into the video as it speeds along, seemingly in a straight line. It's worth noting that the view here is from above, looking down onto the sea. There are other objects that come into the frame, which may be boats or other kinds of crafts. The anomaly, however, appears to be moving far too fast to be any sort of naval vessel. It moves quickly toward the coastline, but as the view shifts from water to land, it becomes impossible to track. Several other clips in the files show objects that suddenly fade or disappear mid-frame, almost as if they just drop out of view. Again, the grainy footage fails to give any clear details of the anomaly in question, so it's difficult to know exactly what we're seeing here. Skeptics argue that this could just be any number of man-made items. UFO enthusiasts point to its rapid rate of travel, plus the strange way it disappears from view, as evidence to support their arguments that it might be something more. Many have also noted how this object is first seen over water, which is also the case for many of the other anomalies caught on camera in the other files. Number 7. Another mysterious object can be seen in video PR-28, which was reportedly captured over Greece in January 2024. It is a relatively short video, but quite interesting for a number of reasons. For starters, the video was accompanied by a separate mission report file, which described seeing some sort of diamond-shaped entity. They added that it was moving at a speed of 434 knots or 500 miles per hour. Perhaps the most interesting part was that the object was only detectable via a short-wave infrared sensor, or SWIR. In the first 10 seconds, the screen is split between the electro-optical and the SWIR views. A faint area of contrast then appears near the center of the split frame. It quickly switches to full-screen SWIR, revealing an inverted teardrop shape with a vertically linear trailing mass hanging just below it. Just before the minute mark of the video, the operator tries to shift to a visible spectrum view, but the object vanishes. When they transition back to SWIR, they're unable to locate the object. It literally vanished mid-air. Some commentators have argued that this object could be some sort of cluster of balloons, but there are a couple of clear flaws in that theory. Firstly, the report notes that this object was moving extremely fast. Second, the fact that it only showed up on the SWIR screen suggests that it wasn't a normal physical object that could easily be seen with the naked eye. UFO enthusiasts argue that it could be another example of a jellyfish-style spacecraft. Next, the one video that gives us arguably the clearest look at a potential flying saucer. Number 6. Only 2 of the videos released in the UFO files are listed as having taken place in North America, and PR-45 is one of them. This particular video was reportedly captured in the southern United States, home to a lot of famous US sightings in places like Texas, Georgia, and Florida. This video was submitted by the Department of the Air Force and is just under a minute long. It was captured in 2020 and it shows a targeting reticle locking onto what first appears to be a ball of light similar to the objects in the other clips seen so far. The sensor narrows its field of view, zooming in on the area of contrast to give us a clearer look as it grows in size and detail. The most fascinating moment comes at the end, when the small white dot suddenly appears much larger, almost like the classic flying saucer from older sci-fi films. AARO notes that this change in size is most likely just perspective as the US platform gets closer to the object. In either case, the shape we see before the anomaly exits the frame is strange. It doesn't appear to resemble any known aircraft, and it has invited a lot of speculation and discussion online about what the object actually is. Number 5. Most of the Pentagon's UFO files show little more than small white orbs or vague shapes moving across the frame at speed. In many cases, they could just as easily be drones, birds, or balloons. This one, however, is a little different. File PR-47 was submitted by the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command and captured in 2023 somewhere around Japan. It lasts for almost 2 minutes, and while not much happens in the clip, it has still triggered plenty of discussion online. It's all down to the strange nature of the anomaly involved. The Pentagon describes it as being made up of 3 distinct areas of contrast, which appear to maintain a fixed position and orientation relative to one another. The video begins with a vague shape in the distance. A few seconds later, the camera zooms in and the full nature of the anomaly is revealed. What seemed to be one shape actually appears to be 3 distinct rings of light that seem to be connected. As the Pentagon's description states, the shapes maintain a fixed position and orientation to one another, meaning that they all move as one, and the camera tracks the anomaly for some time before the video comes to a sudden end. While skeptics have been able to explain most of the videos, there hasn't been any clear, conclusive explanation for this one. Some say the rings might just be some sort of visual distortion caused by lights on an aircraft or a drone, but those who believe in extraterrestrials argue that the appearance of this anomaly is one of the best pieces of evidence for alien life in the entire batch of files. And as this next video proves, this wasn't the only example of a strangely shaped object that left viewers mystified. Number 4. The next video was also captured and submitted by the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, this time in the East China Sea sometime in 2024. It's one of the shorter clips in the set, just lasting 10 seconds. Again, it revolves around an anomalous entity that doesn't really move around during the video itself, but has a very bizarre appearance, one that analysts have struggled to come up with a rational explanation for. The Pentagon describes this anomaly as a football-shaped body with 3 radial projections, 1 oriented vertically and 2 oriented downward at a 45-degree angle relative to the major axis of the main mass. There does appear to be a larger central mass with 2 protrusions extending from the base and another rising vertically from the rear. Analysts noted that the anomaly almost seems to be pulsing, with wave-like movements. Some have even described it as organic in nature. They believe that it could be some sort of gravity-bending spacecraft, turning the laws of physics upside down with its very existence. From a more skeptical perspective, this could just be a small aircraft or drone filmed at an awkward angle. It would naturally distort the shape and make it look unusual. In that case, the radial projections are probably just wings or stabilizing fins rather than anything unusual or unknown. As with the rest of the videos, there's no way to be entirely sure on what this anomaly actually is. That is what makes it an anomaly. But it is one of the stranger-looking entities captured on camera and shared with the public. CBS News Pentagon reporter Eleanor Watson even included this clip in her personal list of the 6 most interesting videos of the entire file release. Number 3. File PR-34 was captured by a U.S. military platform in 2023 somewhere around Greece. It was submitted to AARO by U.S. Central Command along with a detailed mission report. In that report, an unidentified object is described as traveling at speeds of approximately 80 miles per hour close to the surface of the ocean while making multiple 90-degree turns. Some of the internet's biggest UAP and UFO experts and analysts have called this one of, if not the most impressive videos in the entire sets of files. And it's not hard to see why. It runs for almost 3 minutes and things kick off right away as a small object appears in the bottom left of the frame. It then snaps into a sharp 90-degree turn, darting left while still moving at high speed. It then appears to come to a sudden stop before turning back on itself. In the seconds that follow, we see the object continue to move across the screen, going left, then right, and up and down. It continuously stops and readjusts its flight path in unexpected ways. The camera locks onto the object, which then stops its erratic movement and continues in a straight line for a while before suddenly disappearing from view. Skeptics suggest the sharp turns, sudden directional changes, and consistent speed could indicate a drone. Others, however, say that the object's behavior combined with the way it seems to vanish in midair suggests that it could be something otherworldly. Next, let's talk about a video that a former U.S. Navy admiral called absolutely remarkable. Number 2. PR-48 is a 1-minute and 39-second clip captured by an infrared sensor on board a U.S. military platform. It was recorded at some point in 2024 at what seems to be a wind farm somewhere in the Indo-Pacific region. The Pentagon's description for this video is quite brief, noting the appearance of an area of contrast far from the camera that shows up as a faint glowing white orb. What stands out here isn't how it looks, but how it moves. The tiny orb flies through the wind farm, weaving between the turbines at what seems to be a high speed. Eventually, it reaches the end and turns back on itself. Former Rear Admiral Timothy Gallaudet told reporters that this video can't be explained, but that hasn't stopped online analysts from attempting to unpack it. Those on the skeptic side argue that the object could easily be a drone, and the internet is littered with examples of people piloting their drones through wind farms. However, analysts quickly countered that argument. They point out that the turbines or windmills and the offshore wind farms typically have to be spaced at least several hundred feet apart from one another. The object passes from one turbine to the next at great speeds. Some have estimated that it may even be moving faster than the speed of sound, which would be far beyond the capabilities of any commercial drone. So what is the real explanation here? Well, some analysts have dug deeper into the video, stabilizing it and analyzing it frame by frame. They claim the speed and erratic movements are most likely an optical illusion caused by how the footage was recorded. In their opinion, the object is actually traveling in a fairly straight line, and it sits much farther away from the turbines than it actually appears. Number 1. Now we've come to one of the strangest videos of the entire batch and the one that stands out the most, File PR-38. It was reportedly captured by an infrared sensor back in 2013. No oral or written description was provided, but the Pentagon has added its own summary of the scene. It describes how something resembling an 8-pointed star with arms of alternating length appears on the screen early into the almost 2-minute-long video. As the clip progresses, the strange star shape moves in unusual patterns across the screen. At times, it seems to slowly drift one way before suddenly taking a sharp turn in a different direction. The Pentagon's report also notes that the shape appears to have its own visible trail. Halfway through the video, a second much larger shape appears on the screen. It drifts in and out of view a couple of times before disappearing. Soon after, the 8-pointed star eventually speeds off the top of the frame before the video ends. This video has generated a lot of excitement and debate online following the file's release. Some viewers were understandably disturbed by the sight of such a strange shape that appears to move around in unnatural patterns. However, eagle-eyed analysts soon came up with a logical explanation for the entire video. According to them, what we're seeing isn't an advanced alien spacecraft, but a parachute flare used in conflict zones. The flares are launched into the air and they drift down slowly under small parachutes. Because they burn extremely hot, infrared cameras often distort them into starburst shapes due to thermal blooming, which matches what we see in the footage. This could also explain the second object, which looks just like a parachute. Due to the flares being lightweight, they're easily affected by the wind. That would also explain why the star seems to veer around in random directions. As with the other clips, there might be a rational explanation, but there's just enough ambiguity to keep people questioning what they're really seeing. It leaves a bigger question hanging. Are we truly alone in a vast empty universe, or is there something else out there? The next release of files may bring more answers or more questions. A mysterious object moving through space. Astronomers at the Haleakala Observatory in Hawaii spy it entering our solar system, and they soon realize something is very odd. It's not a comet or a meteor, because those travel through space in a direct line. This strange object is tumbling through space and moving so fast that it couldn't have originated from our solar system. What is it? What brought it to our neck of space? And most importantly, why is it here? Astronomers were puzzled, but before they could get their answers, it was gone. The mysterious Oumuamua left our solar system as quickly as it came, sailing past the sun into quarters unknown. Scientists now believe Oumuamua was a cigar-shaped interstellar rock, but its presence in our solar system caused no small stir among scientists. But what would happen if life from another galaxy entered our solar system? This has been the subject of fiction for over a century, from intelligent aliens who come in peace, evil green men who come with laser guns, and even hungry aliens looking for the best way to serve man. We've been thinking about first contact for a long time, but the government has been making plans for the possibility just as long, and they want to make sure we make a good first impression. In 1977, the two Voyager spacecraft launched by NASA each contained a golden phonograph record holding the sounds and images of life on Earth. These unmanned spacecraft are heading into unknown space, including within 2 years' light-speed distance from the star Gliese 445, where many planets exist. If an advanced civilization with the capacity to play the record finds it, they'll find a mix of natural sounds, including animal calls and the sound of wind and waves. They'll see music and greetings in 59 languages and messages from the US President and UN Secretary General at the time. NASA hopes this will let the aliens know what humanity has to offer and either lead them to contact us or to preserve a record of our civilization. After all, the Voyager 1 probe is expected to reach Gliese 445 in about 40,000 years. But what if aliens find our planet first? Does the government have a plan for if they confirm aliens exist? As always with our government, the answer is maybe. Private astronomy firms staff a small group of scientists working in the controversial field known as SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Life. Their goal is to monitor radio telescopes for unusual broadcasts that could be a sign of alien contact. But the problem is, no one knows what form an alien broadcast would take. It could be an alien species that's intelligent enough to have studied our planet and is communicating in a language we'll understand, but it's far more likely that an alien species would know little about our planet and would be communicating in a language we'd have no way to translate, if they even have something comparable to language. In the 1990s, scientists developed new protocols for SETI scientists that indicated they could share any findings with scientists from other countries. This was the tail end of the Cold War, when it was unlikely the United States and Soviet Union would share anything with each other. Relations have warmed, slightly, but no national government has shown much interest in funding SETI research, and the scientists work independently. In 1997, scientists picked up a false alarm signal that looked like a possible contact from aliens. The government didn't contact them, and no one came to drag the scientists off to Area 51. Who did call? Journalists from the New York Times. The government may not be interested in contact with other aliens, but the press sure is. So, what would the government do if they actually did confirm aliens exist? They briefly did fund a program called Project Cyclops in 1971 to coordinate thousands of radio telescopes to scan the cosmos for messages, but it was shelved due to costs, and government efforts have been modest since. It's very likely that any discovery of actual contact with another civilization would suddenly become very classified. Our research into extrasolar planets in systems and galaxies beyond our own has discovered many planets that could be habitable, but no conclusive proof has been found. However, SETI scientists and related METI specialists focusing on messaging are concentrating their efforts on those planets. How the government would react to contact with alien life forms depends heavily on the type of life form. The majority of human space research right now is concentrated on Mars, where we've sent multiple unmanned rovers, like the long-lived NASA Curiosity, to take samples of the soil. There's ample evidence that there was once water and an atmosphere on Mars, making it possible that there was life there before the cosmic upheaval that stripped away the cocktail for life from the planet. Finding evidence of that, like fossils, would give us our first glimpse of extraterrestrial life. But let's go further. What if there was something still there, something small, that had survived the cataclysm? Many species on Earth, like the horseshoe crab, have survived for hundreds of millions of years and multiple extinction waves. So let's say we found a unique arthropod on Mars, the Martian crab, burrowing creatures living under the surface. How would the government respond to this discovery? Because it's a non-sapient form of life, the main priority would be safe study. Our unmanned explorers would take a sample and transmit as much information as possible back to Earth. A program is under development to send an unmanned drone to Mars to pick up samples of Martian soil that would return by 2032. But getting a live sample of a Martian creature back to Earth would be trickier and would probably involve a manned mission to Mars, something that hasn't been attempted by any nation yet. Even if possible, it would involve major risks. We don't know what organisms would be using a Martian creature as a host, meaning the arrival of a sample on Earth would carry the risk of bringing a deadly pathogen back with it. If the US government discovered alien life on a nearby planet, we're likely to leave it there for safety reasons. But what if alien life comes looking for us? Does the government have a plan? If they do, it's so highly classified that none of us know about it. If an intelligent alien species found our planet and wanted to make contact with us, they're likely to be so advanced that they would be setting the terms of the introduction, and we'd be waiting to find out if they were friendly or hostile. So, how would humanity react to first contact with aliens? If history is any indication, probably with panic. One of the most famous close encounters happened in Flatwoods, West Virginia in 1952. Two brothers saw an unknown object fall from the sky and land on a local farmer's property. They gathered a friend of theirs, two random children, and a local National Guardsman and went to investigate. They claimed to have seen a very tall man-like figure with a round red face and odd hood-shaped head. They ran for the authorities, said they had seen a monster, and tried to get the police to chase the alien down. Was it an alien, or was it an owl sitting on top of a tree? The Flatwoods monster was never seen again, but let's hope that if we have a first contact, there's a more organized response. The SETI Permanent Committee of the International Academy of Astronautics developed a protocol plan for first contact, but will the government put it into effect? There are 8 steps. First, make sure that it's of intelligent origin before announcing it. Second, communicate this finding with all other nations who have agreed to this protocol. Third, inform the rest of the astronomical community. Fourth, the discovering party makes the public announcement. Fifth, the data is released to the scientific community. Sixth, any electromagnetic signals are shared with the relevant authority. Seventh, no one makes direct contact individually. Finally, the SETI Permanent Committee reviews these plans regularly to ensure their policies are up to date. This would be a logical and orderly approach to first contact, but would it work out that way? A friendly civilization might be here on a mission of exploration, scientific curiosity, or friendship, but a hostile civilization would probably not announce themselves with dialogue or signals. Could humanity win a war with an unknown alien power? Earth's superpowers have a lot of powerful weapons, but they're designed for combat on Earth. If an alien civilization from outside this galaxy had the ability to travel this far to make contact and attack us, it's likely they have weapons far stronger than ours and ships made of far more durable material. We could fight, but the odds are that any war would be over very quickly and not in our favor. But how would humanity react to a friendly civilization? The biggest problem any alien civilization would have when making contact is getting through our security. Most superpowers have air defense systems that will detect any vessel entering their airspace and shoot it down if it doesn't identify itself and stop when commanded. If the air defense system can shoot down an alien vessel, it could put a very fast stop to first contact and send the aliens back home with word to not mess with the planet. The aliens' best bet to have a peaceful landing might be to land in Antarctica and make first contact with the penguins. But if aliens successfully made peaceful first contact with humanity, or the government confirmed they had made contact, it would cause total upheaval in almost every area of society. Have you ever gone shopping the day before a snowstorm? Imagine that times 10, as everyone would be convinced that an alien invasion would be coming and they'd better stock up. The uncertainty of an alien civilization making contact with Earth would make many people assume the worst was coming, and the question is whether the government would know enough to assure them otherwise, and if they would be willing to declassify the information. Religions would be instantly thrown into turmoil. How many faiths believe that God created humanity in His image? The presence of another highly intelligent species making contact with us would throw that concept into doubt and lead many to question their faith. Some would leave their faith seeking answers elsewhere. Others would believe more fiercely than ever, insisting that the presence of aliens was a test for the faithful, and it's likely that new faiths would spring up around our alien visitors. After all, powerful and strange beings descending from the sky to make contact with us calls some powerful visuals to mind for the faithful. Or maybe religion would go on business as usual. The Vatican, for instance, is itself a believer in extraterrestrial life and has even toyed with the question of if aliens would need evangelizing should contact finally be made. Politically, the confirmation of aliens would create major changes in governments around the world. We would likely see closer cooperation between ally nations and even rivals, as they would want to present a united front to any alien civilization. After all, the fate of humanity's future interaction with the stars could depend on making a good first impression. But what about enemy nations, especially those in the middle of a war? Would it create a temporary truce, or would various parties try to play the aliens against the enemy? If the aliens were carrying advanced technology or weapons, it would be tempting for an ambitious nation to try to get their hands on it before anyone else. One field that would be booming in the aftermath of alien contact is legal scholars. Every law on Earth is meant to apply to humans and Earth-based animals. What rights would aliens have on Earth? Would they be considered visitors or invaders? If aliens made first contact by sending radio waves, who owns the dispatches? And then there's the question of what the government chooses to share with us. Open government advocates would be fighting to release all details of what the feds knew about aliens before first contact. Will we finally know what's in Area 51? If alien technology arrived on Earth and the aliens were willing to share it with us, or we successfully shot down an unmanned alien probe, scientists everywhere would be pressed into service. Both the government and corporations would try to reverse engineer the technology, and if it was a technology that had use on Earth, the company that cracked the code here would be rolling in the money. Alien technology could be a market game changer like never seen before, which is why it's just as likely that the government immediately seizes it, nationalizes it, and classifies it. But no sector would be busier in the aftermath of first contact than the media. This would be the biggest story in human history. If the aliens are still a mystery because humanity is working out the details of first contact, every TV and movie studio would be scrambling to come up with their fictionalized version of the aliens. And if the aliens have made first contact with the public, the race to get the first interview with them would be one of the biggest prizes imaginable for journalists. Once the aliens are known by humanity, they would become massive celebrities. Any first contact with aliens would be a massive culture shock for us, but it might be just as big a culture shock for the aliens. Life on Earth. Scientists have been studying it for centuries, creating a timeline from when the first single-cell beings emerged in primordial waters to today, when billions of humans populate the surface. But there's one question they've never been able to answer with 100% certainty. How exactly did it begin? Most scientists think it started from a complex chemical reaction in the water of the early Earth. Some argue for a more intelligent hand guiding the process. The only thing that's sure is that no one's sure, and everyone has an opinion. But what if the origin of life on Earth didn't actually come from Earth? Could life on Earth be the product of extraterrestrials? So far, we don't have any conclusive proof for or against life outside of Earth. No contact has been made and no DNA or fossils from other life forms have been discovered. But we've only explored a tiny fragment of the universe out there, almost none of it in person. And the odds that countless planets surrounding countless stars would have no other planets capable of supporting life since the Big Bang is pretty slim. And after billions of years of this universe existing, many of those worlds may not exist anymore. Asteroids, comets, and other interstellar phenomena can immediately bring a crushing end to any world's life forms, as the dinosaurs found out the hard way. But what if the life from those worlds didn't stay on those worlds? The hypothesis is panspermia, which claims that not only does life exist throughout the universe, but that it gets carried from world to world by traveling objects like asteroids and comets, the space dust that gets attached to anything traveling through space. Even the spaceships that humans send to explore the moon and nearby planets may have microscopic forms of life in them that travel to other worlds and seed them when they land, creating the building blocks of future life on those worlds. But could anything survive in the cold vacuum of space? Well, we couldn't, and neither could most animals on Earth. But when you look at smaller animals, some survive climates that could kill humans in seconds. The Pompeii worm lives in deep hydrothermal vents that can reach up to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. The flatbark beetle, which lives in some of the coldest climates in North America, produces natural antifreeze chemicals that help it survive in the winter and enter a sort of stasis, smoothly surviving the coldest parts of the winter while we're fighting over the thermostat. Neither of them could survive in space, but that's not the case for one microscopic creature. The name water bear probably creates cute images of an ursine mammal enjoying a bath in the river, but the real thing is much less cuddly and also less likely to eat you. Also called a tardigrade, this tiny organism is the only form of life that seems to be able to live anywhere, even in the most extreme conditions. They've been found everywhere from deserts to hot springs, and they may even potentially exist in space, thanks to a crash of a sample from a spaceship on the moon. These tiny multi-legged creatures can dry up and fall into a state that resembles death, but when exposed to water, even decades later, they spring back to life. So, if life originated from outside Earth, how exactly did it get here? There are a couple of theories of exactly how these building blocks of life arrived on our ancient planet, most of them based around interstellar physics. One theory from a Swedish scientist in 1903 theorizes that the radiation pressure from stars can send particles through space, but this would only work for the smallest particles, and many, if not all, would be killed off by the radiation. But it's possible that alien bacteria or viruses could survive if shielded from UV radiation. The other main theory is that the particles that led to the creation of life were hitchhikers on rocks, coming into contact with Earth when the rocks crash-landed here. While we know how asteroids, comets, and meteors travel through the galaxy, this is under far more extreme conditions than any life form has been known to survive, surviving in the vacuum of space for years on end before crash landing. But there is another theory, that the alien life forms didn't come here accidentally. What if the alien life out there was intelligent and advanced enough that they could have sent the building blocks of life toward Earth deliberately? The first possibility of this is accidental transport. On Earth, there have been countless cases of people throwing trash into the water and having it swept somewhere completely different, often endangering animal life in the process. It's possible that an alien civilization would have been advanced enough to send waste products into space and dump them on an uninhabited world. That, thanks to the trace DNA on the waste, evolved into Earth as we know today. But other theories say that seeding of Earth might be much more deliberate. Directed panspermia is the idea that alien species created life on Earth via transport of organisms from their world. The idea of a deliberate seeding of this planet sidesteps a lot of the issues with the other theories, because the aliens would have been able to shield the samples for their trip, eliminating the threat that the journey through space or the cosmic radiation would kill off the organisms before they ever reach their target. The alien species, if advanced enough to send samples into space, would be able to send them at high speeds that would allow them to reach their destination in a more feasible time. So, why would aliens want to seed our planet? The first possible theory is that the aliens were looking to secure and protect life in space by spreading it among a larger area. Even the strongest civilization could be felled by a natural disaster or a stray comet. And when life exists on more than one world, it's insured against the whims of the cosmos. Of course, that was 3.5 billion years ago, and the odds are good that any alien civilization that seeded Earth at the dawn of our world would be long gone themselves by now. But what if they weren't? There have been many theories about aliens making contact with Earth, but thus far no conclusive proof has been found, regardless of how many people say they were abducted by a flying saucer. But if aliens are out there and may even have ties to the creation of life on Earth, then why haven't they made contact yet? One theory is that they simply don't want to. They're more than happy just to watch. This is called the zoo hypothesis, and it states that we're all essentially living in a giant terrarium. Whatever these aliens are, they have technology far beyond ours, and they're perfectly happy watching us as our still primitive planet slowly evolves. If we don't know about their existence, it's because they don't want us to know yet. So, are there any problems with this idea? Just one big one. Have you ever tried to get a group of people to agree on anything? Trying to get 10 people to agree on one place to eat is hard enough. Imagine how difficult it'd be to get an entire civilization to agree to keep a secret forever without any of them breaking the code of silence and broadcasting their existence to our human zoo. It would have had to last millions of years of humans and their ancestors existing, and likely countless generations of the aliens not breaking their own protocol. That's why many people say the zoo hypothesis resembles creationism and religious theory more than panspermia. But have the aliens truly maintained a hands-off approach all this time? A popular idea, but maybe not so popular among scientists, is that Earth has been visited repeatedly by advanced alien civilizations that may have interacted with humans before recorded history, called the ancient astronauts theory. It often has ties to various religions. After all, how many religious texts refer to powerful and mysterious beings descending from the heavens and performing miracles? But is there any evidence of these interstellar visits? If you watch a program called Ancient Aliens, a lot. This popular documentary-style series looks at evidence of alien interactions with humans with a particular focus on early civilizations and the idea that certain technology and buildings couldn't have been constructed by pre-industrial humans alone. They look at mythology of giants and gods, massive structures like the pyramids that show up across the world, and technology that seems too advanced for the time, like the massive clockwork Antikythera mechanism of ancient Greece. With 16 seasons and almost 200 episodes, there are a lot of believers, but just as many detractors. The ancient astronauts theory, and ancient aliens in particular, has been criticized for using selective evidence and disregarding the contributions of early native cultures. The construction methods for megalithic structures like Stonehenge, the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and the Mayan pyramids have been investigated and largely proven. While there's still a lot of mysteries surrounding ancient architecture, like the giant stone spheres of Costa Rica, few of them seem to point to aliens, but that hasn't stopped the speculation from growing. We don't know for sure if aliens have visited Earth, but there's a chance that their DNA is still with us. We might be all descended from aliens if their organisms seeded our world eons ago. The most likely scenario, if we evolved from alien microorganisms, is that we're so radically different from the original species by now that there'd be no similarity anymore. If an alien species did seed Earth deliberately, then the odds are it didn't seed Earth with the most advanced form of life on its planet, but one of the smallest and easiest to transport. The continuum of life on Earth indicates that life likely started with microorganisms swimming in the water before turning into larger forms of life and eventually heading onto land, a far cry from the aliens who might have organized Earth's seeding. But could humanity's ties to alien DNA be a lot more recent? Many proponents of the ancient astronauts theory suggest that the aliens may have continued to visit Earth up until the early days of humanity and may have actually bred with humans, leaving traces of their DNA in ours. While the idea of aliens on a pleasure cruise looking for some exotic party times might be relatable, especially if they have common DNA with those party kids who hit Cancun every spring break, there are a lot of holes in the theory. The aliens would have to still be around and in a similar shape billions of years after Earth was first seeded, and they'd have to be genetically compatible with humans despite those billions of years of evolution. So no, it's not very likely that your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa was an alien. But that doesn't mean this kind of interbreeding between humans and their distant relatives isn't possible. Recent studies indicate that human fossils have traces of DNA from ancient humans that preceded Homo sapiens. The more famous Neanderthals are in there, but so are an extinct species of archaic humans we know relatively little about. The Denisovans, only identified in 2010 in Siberia, they've been identified from a few bones and teeth that are distinct from other species. When ancient genomes were sequenced for the first time, scientists found fragments of genetic code that didn't match up with Homo sapiens. Neanderthals were quickly identified. In fact, it's estimated that most humans besides Africans have up to 4% of trace Neanderthal DNA in their genome. No one knows exactly what population of ancient humans may be lurking in the recesses of the human genome, both ancient and modern. What we do know is that modern humans are a complex mix of influences that made us what we are. Could one of those influences be from beyond our solar system? We don't have proof of that yet. But the human genome is a mystery, and we don't have proof that it's impossible either. One question we always ask ourselves from time to time: are we alone in the universe? Many of us would like to believe that there's more out there than just us. And looking up at the stars and planets, it's hard not to think about the possibility of life beyond Earth. It seems like something out of science fiction, but there's some pretty convincing evidence out there. And that's what this video is all about. It's 50 crazy facts about aliens that will convince you they exist. So get ready for an out-of-this-world video that might just turn you from a skeptic to a believer. Number 50. There's a scientific organization dedicated to looking for them. Carl Sagan and Jill Tarter, two well-known astronomers, founded the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, or SETI, to explore, understand, and explain the origin and nature of life in the universe and the evolution of intelligence. Number 49. There are thousands of other planets outside our solar system. NASA has confirmed that the number of exoplanets, or planets that revolve around a different star as opposed to our Sun, is over 4,000. That's a lot of planets that could be home to alien life. Number 48. A famous asteroid may be debris from an alien structure. Avi Lloyd, a former Harvard astronomy professor, theorized that the famous asteroid Oumuamua is actually a piece of debris from an alien structure or even an alien spacecraft. Number 47. People have been seeing UFOs in America since the 1600s. The first UFO sighting in American history was recorded by John Winthrop in 1639, who wrote in his diary about a sighting of strange green light that ran as swift as an arrow and transported a boat full of Puritans a mile upstream. Number 46. There was an Air Force UFO investigation operation called Project Blue Book, started after a pilot reported 9 strange flying objects in 1947. Project Blue Book compiled reports on more than 12,000 UFO sightings from 1952 to 1969, after which it was dissolved. Number 45. UFOs don't have to look like flying saucers. A UFO account by pilot Kenneth Arnold described a UFO as moving like a saucer if you skip it across the water, leading to the image of a UFO as having a saucer-like shape. Number 44. There are over 17,000 nearby stars likely to have planets that could support complex life. The list was compiled by astronomers Margaret Turnbull and Jill Tarter of the Carnegie Institution in Washington, D.C. Number 43. We may come across an alien radio signal by 2025. Seth Shostak, senior astronomer at SETI, believes the Allen Telescope Array, which is currently being built, will come across an alien signal by that year. Number 42. There could be alien life hiding in our own solar system. The most likely places for it to be found are underground refuges on Mars, hotspots on Enceladus, one of Saturn's moons, or beneath the mysterious ice crusts of Jupiter's moons, Europa and Callisto. Number 41. We made TV for aliens. On September 30, 2006, the French Center for National Space Studies sent Cosmic Connection, their alien-targeted TV program, toward a star 45 light-years away. If there are aliens there, the signal should reach them by 2051. Number 40. We used to think there weren't any planets outside our solar system. 30 years ago, we hadn't discovered one planet outside of the solar system we call home. Now, we've learned about more than 3,000. Number 39. Scientists estimate that 1 in every 5 or 6 planets resides in the Goldilocks zone, which means it's just the right temperature for water to form on the surface in liquid form. Where there is water, there can be life. Number 38. Earth is getting radio signals we can't explain. FRBs, or fast radio bursts, have been detected since 2007. We don't know much about them except that they're coming from outside the Milky Way galaxy. Some experts think they might be an advanced civilization trying to speak to us, or they're just sending us the latest alien pop hits. Number 37. Paul Hellyer, Canada's former defense minister, is a believer. According to Hellyer, at least 80 different species of aliens have visited Earth over the last several thousand years. Number 36. Some people believe that aliens have played a role in humanity's development during these several thousand years. A number of alien addicts buy into the controversial Ancient Aliens theory, which posits that aliens could have influenced a number of cultures, including the ancient Egyptians. Number 35. Even celebrities have UFO sightings. Oscar-winning director Guillermo del Toro spotted a UFO in Guadalajara, which he described as a flying saucer, so cliched with lights. Number 34. Britain's first astronaut says they exist. No one knows space better than an astronaut, and Helen Sharman, the first British citizen in space, told The Observer aliens exist, there's no two ways about it. Number 33. There is a UFO in a 15th century painting. The Madonna with St. Giovannino might depict the Virgin Mary in the foreground, but behind her, a strange shape can be seen that looks suspiciously like a flying saucer. Number 32. A 9th century Latin manuscript may directly reference aliens. In it, the Archbishop of Lyons described a story about a region from whence come ships in the clouds, occupied by sailors. There were even 3 men and a woman who claimed to have fallen from these skyships, but they were stoned to death for their story. Number 31. The U.S. Navy has confirmed the existence of UFOs. When describing 3 clips of declassified military footage that became public between 2017 and 2018, the Navy referred to them as unidentified aerial phenomena. Number 30. The most famous American UFO sighting of all time occurred in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, when a strange object was seen falling from the sky. The Army first described the object as a flying disc, but later claimed it was from a weather balloon. Witnesses supposedly saw the military take away a flying disc and alien bodies. Number 29. A UFO interfered at a U.S. nuclear base. In 1967, the missiles at a Montana base became mysteriously unlaunchable, while a large red glowing object floated above the facility. Perhaps those aliens were pacifists. Number 28. Extremophiles prove that life can exist under harsh conditions. Some creatures on Earth, like tardigrades that can withstand temperatures from 0 degrees to over 100 degrees Celsius, can go without food for 10 years, can live through just about anything. And if these creatures can do it, what's to stop similar creatures from thriving on seemingly inhospitable planets? Number 27. On August 15, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope at Ohio State University picked up a radio signal that lasted for 72 seconds, came from almost 220 light-years away, and has never been found again. It was so impressive that the observing scientists wrote "wow" on the computer printout of the signal. Number 26. On September 12, 1952, 7 residents of Braxton County in West Virginia claimed to see a 10-foot-tall alien in the hills above Flatwoods. These sightings followed the appearance of a red light in the sky that appeared to fall and crash on a local farm. The apparent alien became a local legend known as the Flatwoods Monster. Skeptics believe the creature may have been the glowing eyes of a barn owl, but a number of witnesses stick to their story. Number 25. There are subsurface oceans of water beneath several moons in our solar system and throughout the universe, and these might be the perfect place for alien life to thrive. These hidden oceans are excellent for developing life, but also make it difficult for us to detect. Number 24. A number of people who reported alien sightings also reported run-ins with the so-called Men in Black, who, far from their charming Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones movie counterparts, often apparently behave a lot like creepy aliens themselves. Number 23. Betty and Barney Hill were a couple that claimed to be abducted by aliens in 1961. They recovered memories of this encounter through regressive hypnosis. While many were skeptical, Betty was able to draw a map of the alien's supposed constellation from memory. Scientists noted that the drawing resembled the actual constellation of Zeta Reticuli. Number 22. In 1957, a Brazilian farmer claimed to have been abducted by aliens, probed, and bred. Doctors later confirmed that the farmer had suffered radiation poisoning, which could not be explained. Number 21. This year, the Pentagon released 3 videos of UFOs recorded by the Navy, one from 2004 and 2 from 2015. The 3 videos depict objects moving through the sky in strange ways that cannot be explained, as the pilots filming them react with confusion and excitement. Number 20. China has developed a new fixed 100-meter aperture spherical radio telescope, or FAST, that can be used to search for extraterrestrial signals. If all goes according to plan, this could potentially make China the first country to make contact with an alien civilization. Number 19. Tom DeLonge, a former member of American rock band Blink-182, now spends a lot of his time being a professional UFOologist with his organization, the To the Stars Academy. He's also apparently a big believer in Bigfoot. Number 18. Former President Jimmy Carter once saw a UFO. On September 18, 1973, he filed a report with the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, describing his sighting. The object was very bright with changing colors and about the size of the moon. Number 17. During World War II, Air Force pilots on overnight missions encountered colorful lights that would chase the aircraft. These lights could move up to 200 miles per hour and flew circles around the pilots. The pilots nicknamed these alien lights Foo Fighters. Number 16. In 1997, thousands of people in Arizona claimed to see strange lights fly across the sky in a V-shape. These were nicknamed the Phoenix Lights. Number 15. A logger named Travis Walton disappeared for 5 days in 1975 after a glowing disc zapped him with what was described as a bluish ray. He was found on the roadside with stories of aliens that looked like well-developed fetuses in tan robes. Number 14. In February of 1942, the Army attacked a glowing object near Culver City, assuming it was an air raid. However, even after the object disappeared, no pieces of it were ever found. Many suspected that an alien craft was responsible. Number 13. Some scientists attribute the effects of supposed alien abductions to sleep paralysis, a condition that causes an inability to move when one's mind is trapped in a temporary sort of walking nightmare. However, others argue that sleep paralysis does not explain away all the effects of abductions. Number 12. Famous physicist Stephen Hawking advised against contacting alien life, saying, "If aliens ever visit us, I think the outcome would be much as when Christopher Columbus landed in America." Number 11. There's supposedly a document known as Project Grudge Report 13 that details the investigation into a supposed alien abduction of an American Air Force sergeant. However, despite testimonies from a former Green Beret captain and various conspiracy theorists, there is no official information on Report 13 available. Number 10. In 2019, in Colorado, 5 bulls showed up dead, drained of blood, and with body parts cleanly removed. Many attributed this, as with other accounts of unexplained cattle mutilation, to the actions of aliens. Number 9. Fran Drescher, the former star of The Nanny, believes that both she and her ex-husband were abducted by aliens before they met. The two have matching scars, which Drescher attributes to experiments done on them during their abduction. Number 8. The first crop circles appeared in the English countryside in the 1970s. Over the years, many have associated crop circles with alien activity, though others insist that they're man-made hoaxes. Number 7. The term "little green men" as a depiction for aliens originated from an encounter in Hopkinsville, Kentucky in 1955. The Sutton family witnessed a UFO landing and claimed to be attacked by a group of strange humanoid creatures with metallic skin. They were described as little men, and that later turned into little green men. Number 6. SETI uses deep-sea exploration to practice for deep space exploration. They use robots to explore deep-sea vents in preparation for similar climates that might appear in alien oceans on other planets, allowing us to prepare to get closer to an environment that might house alien life. Number 5. In 1987, a man named Ed Walters claimed to be contacted by aliens who physically lifted him off the ground with a beam of light from one of their ships. He took many photos of the supposed ships, which are still a source of great debate to this day. Number 4. A horror writer named Whitley Strieber claimed to be abducted by aliens from his cabin on December 26, 1985. He wrote a book about his encounter, which was made into a film starring Christopher Walken. Number 3. In December of 1980, several witnesses claimed to see mysterious lights over Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England. One of the witnesses was a United States Air Force deputy base commander who wrote about the sighting in an affidavit issued in 2010, where he described these lights as extraterrestrial in origin. Number 2. Most UFO abductees describe the same kind of alien: humanoid, bald, with large eyes and gray skin. This description is so common that this type of alien has become colloquially known as the Greys. Number 1. There's a support group based in New England for people who have had encounters with aliens. As of 2009, the group has had over 1,500 members, each with their own story of an alien encounter or abduction. The specific details of the group are kept secret for the privacy and safety of its members. Are we alone in the universe? There's no way to know yet. But humanity isn't taking any chances. In 1977, the Voyager spacecrafts carried 2 golden records into space, each containing sounds and images designed to explain life on Earth. The idea is that aliens will find them, have the proper technology to play a 1977 record, and then learn about our little planet. Maybe they'll pay us a visit. What could go wrong? Well, it turns out a lot. The idea of making contact with aliens has been a fixation for us since the beginning of the space age, and most scenarios begin the same way. An alien spaceship lands and out come some little green or gray men, and they say, "Take us to your leader," and they get to meet the president. Okay, so now what? Well, if you ask the hopeful people who can't wait for aliens to visit us, they'll tell you that only good things are coming. Aliens will probably bring technology far beyond ours, and they'll be excited to share it with us. Maybe we'll get the technology they use to clone bodies and conquer death. Maybe they'll take us on a tour of the cosmos at light speed. Maybe we'll even get those flying cars they promised us in the Jetsons. And all thanks to our new high-tech friends from the stars. No wonder everyone was so excited about them paying us a visit. But the reality might be very different. Scientists are the ones responsible for reaching out into space and finding evidence of life, but if you talk to many of them, they're the ones most nervous about finding out if there actually is someone else out there watching. And when scientists are concerned, we should probably listen, right? While they're continuing the efforts to unmask the hidden faces in the galaxies far beyond ours, many also privately say that the odds are, if we do succeed, the result could be a very harsh awakening about our place in the universe. Because we may not be the top dogs anymore. Humanity has dominated Earth as the only sapient species for over 1 million years, and we really don't have any competitors. The only real threat to us seems to be ourselves. But in terms of space travel, we can still only cover a very small area. Humanity has gotten to the moon, sent complex unmanned probes to Mars, and conducted surveillance missions in the Milky Way. Some of the furthest reaching probes we've sent are one-way missions, and we're pretty confident at this point that there isn't any other intelligent life in the solar system that we're close to discovering. While it's possible that life could exist or previously has existed on Mars or some of the large moons of the gas giants like Titan or Io, most of the landscapes in our solar system are deeply inhospitable to the development of life, which means any life that comes looking for us would come from much further. And that means that any alien species that makes contact with us would likely be much more advanced than us, and we'd be dependent on their goodwill once they arrive. The best case scenario is that the aliens who find us would be fellow scientists looking to learn about our culture and then leave. We likely wouldn't have much to offer them, but hopefully they would be followers of the famous Star Trek concept of the Prime Directive, which is that advanced species in the Starfleet should not interfere with the development of more primitive cultures. But even that has its risks. Imagine if an alien spaceship shows up on Earth, scans us for information, and then leaves because it didn't think we were worth talking to. Way to cause global psychological breakdown, aliens. but most scenarios paint a much bleaker picture. The take us to your leader aliens are one kind of visitors from the stars, but another is much less friendly. How many movies have begun with aliens landing and immediately attacking Earth? What do they want exactly? Humans to take upstairs for probing? Maybe it's a hunting expedition for an alien bachelor party. No matter the cause for an alien invasion, the harsh fact is that humanity would have very little chance to defend itself against an alien invasion because their technology would be incredibly advanced compared to ours. You can call in the team from Top Gun to scramble the fighter jets, but the odds are that any spaceship that could travel across multiple galaxies to find us would be able to handle any technology we have. But what if the aliens aren't even here for us? One of the most iconic depictions of an alien invasion in film history is the 1996 movie Independence Day, which saw countless disc-like alien ships descend to Earth without a word and attack, blowing up major cities and shooting lasers into massive holes they created in Earth's crust. Humanity did wind up winning, partially thanks to a pilot sacrificing himself and flying directly into the mothership, but the scariest thing wasn't the scope of the invasion, it was the reasoning. The aliens didn't care about humanity. They simply wanted to mine the planet for its resources and then leave a destroyed husk in its place. They didn't care about the small, primitive animals living on the surface, and if an advanced alien species just decided they wanted to use humanity for resources, there would likely be very little we could do to resist. Good thing there's no history of humanity doing that, right? Maybe the biggest threat of an alien invasion is that humanity would wind up being the latest victim of alien colonialism. The same brutal story from human history would play out once again. A society is largely keeping to itself when suddenly ships appear on the horizon. The colonists say they're here to civilize the tribe and take it over in the name of some glorious far-flung empire. In the best-case scenario, the tribe loses its independence and many of its traditions. There might be forced assimilation, the taking of children to be educated in the colonizer's system, and the imposition of a new government. And that's the best-case scenario. Many colonizers viewed the people they colonized as less than human. They would enslave them and force them to work their own land for resources to be taken back to the colonial power. If they resisted, they would be brutally killed. And many colonizers committed outright genocides on the indigenous people. So one of the biggest risks of alien contact is that the aliens wouldn't view us as their equals at all, but as their new property. But the danger to the natives during colonization wasn't just in terms of the occupiers' actions. In many cases, the population was decimated not by murder, but by disease. The natives lived in their own ecosystem, and the colonizers brought their own diseases from the homeland. The immune system of the natives was unprepared, and many were wiped out by diseases including smallpox and cholera. This was weaponized by cruel colonists at times, but most of the deaths were the result of accidental exposure. The good news is medical science has advanced a lot since then, and the introduction of new alien diseases would be studied by scientists who might be able to cure them in short order, but only if they followed the rules we know. Novel viruses do pop up regularly, but they're usually closely related to another virus that already exists. When COVID-19 popped up and devastated the world in 2020, scientists who were working to develop a vaccine for past coronaviruses, including the common cold, jumped into action, and they were able to create working vaccines in less than a year. But without that base of knowledge, trying to decipher an alien virus would be like trying to crack a cipher in a completely new language. And that's assuming that it doesn't just wipe out humanity in a hurry because our immune systems are uniquely vulnerable from the first handshake. And that's not the only bad scenario that includes disease. Assuming that we are the less advanced species in the equation, it makes sense that we'd be the most vulnerable to the disease, but that might not always be the case. A more advanced species might also be a more sterile one, and it's possible that the aliens may not be able to handle disease. Thus, the scenario could be flipped. Peaceful aliens make first contact, shake hands, and come down with all our diseases. Suddenly, we have a dead alien delegation on our hands. In the best case scenario, it's a massive missed opportunity that may never be recovered. In the worst case scenario, we now have an angry second delegation wearing biohazard suits coming to sterilize the planet. And that's not the only way an alien organism could affect the planet. Alright, so let's go for a slightly less intense first contact scenario. Say humanity manages to land on the moon of Io, get under the atmosphere, and they discover a strange creature living there. It's about the size of a rabbit, made out of what looks like black stone. It's kinda cute. The mission brings one back to Earth to study it, and then it turns out that that creature reproduces asexually and lives off the oxygen in Io's atmosphere that is mostly made up of sulfur dioxide. Exposed to Earth's atmosphere filled with oxygen, it starts reproducing exponentially, consuming the resources we need to live. It's like the trouble with tribbles as an apocalyptic event. Is this an unlikely series of events? Sure, but given how little we know about the possibility of life outside of Earth, it's impossible to rule anything out. We are staring into the unknown, and scientists say that it should scare us. Scientists like nuclear physicist Enrico Fermi have looked at the possibility of contact with another species and observed that it seems like if they were out there, they probably should have contacted us by now. The explanation for why they haven't is that the scenarios where intelligent life can develop are exceedingly rare, and with the universe being over 13 billion years old and human life existing for only around 2 million years, the pockets of time in which we could make contact are few and easy to miss. Any first contact would be extremely risky and likely involve contact between two planets at drastically different stages of their development. It's entirely possible that 100 million years ago, some enterprising aliens discovered Earth, came to visit, and got eaten by massive reptiles. Their home world marked a do not visit sign on Earth and haven't been back since. But surely it's not all bad news, right? Well, let's say everything goes right, and our space program advances to the point where we can explore more outside of our galaxy, and we make contact with another species from a neighboring galaxy. They're similarly advanced, maybe a century or so in terms of progress beyond us, including having a universal translator that makes communication possible. We're able to make first contact in neutral space and bring the knowledge we've gained back to Earth to figure out what to do next. Now, we have to deal with the biggest problem of making alien first contact, having to deal with humanity itself. The sad fact is, humans can't agree on anything, and that's likely to continue here. While humans have been fascinated with the concept of alien first contact for a long time, they're not exactly prepared to do it, and the discovery would be one of the biggest moments in human history, so what could go wrong? Try just about everything imaginable. Humanity has had some test runs for alien landings, and generally the response is complete chaos and an overeagerness for violence. You just have to look back at what happened in Flatwoods, West Virginia in 1952. It was September 12th when two brothers and their friends saw something streak through the sky that seemed to land on a plot of a nearby farmer. They went and told a local woman who accompanied the three boys alongside a local National Guardsman and two children they let tag along with them. When they reached the top of the hill, the group claims to have seen a tall figure with a round red face surrounded by what looked like a massive hood. While this is now believed to have been a barn owl perching on a dead tree, it caused a panic in the town that created a decades-long mystery and no shortage of people ready to confront a space alien without a moment's hesitation. And that reveals another potential problem with first contact: who gets to do the contact? Assuming we're not being invaded, we still know essentially nothing about alien cultures. We have no way of knowing what their culture is like. A handshake, the most famous human greeting, might be an unpardonable insult in alien culture because they consider the hands to be the most unclean part of the body. The only way to find out is trial and error, and then we have to hope that they are a particularly reasonable species. Odds are those first few days after the first contact might be some of the most tense in human history. But it is nothing compared to what would be going on back at Earth. The odds are that everyone would want a piece of the aliens, figuratively and in some cases literally. World governments would be competing to get the first face-to-face meeting with the alien leader, no doubt explaining to them who the good guys are and the bad guys are on Earth. The edge would go to whoever space program discovered the aliens, but the opportunity is so big that no one should be surprised if it turns into a shooting war to be first in line, and that means that the alien delegation could be caught in the middle. But what if it's not a government at all? The process of space exploration has been increasingly privatized, especially in the United States. Struggles back home and a lack of progress in making big leaps has led to many countries to cut funding for their space programs, and into the breach stepped billionaires Elon Musk, Richard Branson, and Jeff Bezos. They focused so far on heading to Mars and sending unmanned spacecraft into deep space, but if they made contact with an alien species first, it would put the governments of the world into a sticky situation. While Musk does partner with NASA on many of his space projects, there's no guarantee that the messages would sync up when it comes time to make contact. And that's to say nothing of the chaos in other areas. No one would be shaken more by alien contact than the religious of the world. Most have a doctrine that humanity was created in God's image, and most either quietly or loudly believe that we're the only intelligent life in the universe. The discovery of another intelligent species would result in a crisis of faith not seen before in human history. Some religions might change up their doctrine to account for it, others might see people leave the faith as it no longer makes sense to them, yet others might preach that the aliens are agents of the devil and should be opposed at any cost, potentially putting the alien delegation in danger when they arrive. And yet another group might try to convert the aliens to their faith. Don't worry, the human escorts will likely just tell them to ignore the pamphlets. But religious fervor isn't the only kind of fervor they might encounter. What's one of the most dramatic issues of the modern day? Immigration. Not only are many countries concerned with keeping their border secure, but many people don't even like the idea of immigrants coming in legally. There have been calls for reducing the number of visas given for work and visitation, as well as some demanding to eliminate birthright citizenship that grants citizenship to any child born in the country to a foreign parent. And that's just other humans. So what happens when the sky parts and aliens make clear that even our atmospheric border might be open to new visitors? While most people would likely respond with curiosity, a good number will respond with fear and even anger. Is there even a way to secure ourselves from a visit or an invasion like that? Do we hear someone chanting, "Build an atmospheric wall and make the aliens pay for it"? But those are all extremists, and at least the government should have things in order, right? Well, the governments of Earth have been planning for an alien first contact for a while, and while they're not always in sync, there is an international plan to follow. But that doesn't mean things will go smoothly. For one thing, any alien visitor will be bringing with them technology that would be far beyond anything we've seen, and the temptation will be high for governments to try to get their hands on it and then weaponize it. There have been persistent rumors that the government already has some alien technology thanks to supposed UFO crashes in the post-World War II years. While there's no proof that Area 51 is actually alien-related, it's likely that an alien visit would kick off a massive intelligence race to get the details of their ships and other technology. This could not only increase tensions between the nation here on Earth, but could get all of Earth in hot water if the aliens discover a spy. Okay, let's say we sidestep all those problems. Now what? Once humanity makes first contact with aliens, the focus will likely turn to what they can do for us. If humanity can gain their trust, we'll likely want to know about their medical system, their technology, and anything else that might enhance human life on Earth. The aliens may be willing to share this, but odds are they'll be a lot more hesitant to let us in on the details of their home world. And there's a very good reason for that. Humans visiting new worlds for the first time rarely results in anything good. We've talked about aliens colonizing us, but what happens if we're the colonists? The thing is, Earth isn't doing so great. We've got climate change, we've got diseases, and we've got a lot of humans who don't always have somewhere to live. So many people have been looking for a place to expand to. The most popular opportunity is Mars colonies, where humans would live in bunkers and only be able to exit wearing spacesuits. So the presence of a planet with potentially breathable atmosphere, inhabited by a species we've already befriended, is very tempting as a potential new home. So would history repeat itself? The difference between the colonialism of the past and this one would be that the aliens likely would be far better armed than the humans. Most native societies did have robust self-defenses, and many took the colonists by surprise with how fiercely they fought for their independence. But few societies could ultimately resist the superior navies and the resources of the crown, especially combined with the impact of disease wrecking the society. Attempting to colonize an alien planet would have a much higher likelihood of the humans being routed quickly. But if we took a peaceful alien society by surprise, they could soon find themselves as a colony of Earth. And that would raise a lot of questions about expansion. The human instinct to expand has always been with us, with explorations for new societies having been part of cultures for thousands of years. But that rarely ends in a shaking of hands and trading of wisdom. More often than not, it ends with two societies trading their best shots and one eventually coming to an end. Would that happen again if we made first contact with aliens? There are many scenarios where first contact is the worst thing to happen to humans, to aliens, or in some cases, both. Well, this is depressing, but what is the best case scenario for first contact? It's probably one where humanity's worst instincts are kept in check and the aliens are inherently benevolent. If governments are restrained enough to not run over each other to be the first to meet the aliens, and religion and politics stay out of it, the most likely scenario is that humans are fascinated with aliens. After all, this is the biggest discovery in human history, proof of a society out in the cosmos that has taken many of the same evolutionary steps as us, but followed a very different path. And what's the first thing we probably do in that case? Well, put them on TV, of course. Ironically, the saving grace of the aliens who make first contact might be that capitalism has a very big vested interest in keeping them safe. As soon as they step out of the spaceship, the aliens will be the biggest celebrities in the world. And while governments and religions are concerned with what this means for the future, Hollywood will want to get the most out of them now. The reporter who gets the first interview with an alien representative will become a historical icon. And how long before an enterprising producer decides to try to cast the first alien on Dancing with the Stars? But with increased visibility comes increased risk. Alien discourse has been filled with conspiracy theories for decades already, and media representation often has a big impact on how we view other people. So will our demonization of aliens in media impact how we act to our new acquaintances? Well, at least there's ALF and ET to balance things out, plus Star Trek has been showing us a future where humans and aliens coexist in the cosmos since the 1960s. So basically, first contact with aliens could work out. If humanity brings the best of the best to the negotiating table, the aliens come with our best interests in mind, religion and politics don't get in the way, and Hollywood behaves responsibly and sensibly, and above all, everyone needs to listen to the advice the scientists give us about a monumental moment in human history with plenty of risks and opportunities. Yeah, that should be fine. We can trust everyone to act reasonably. The United States and other nations are involved in a secret arms race involving recovered alien technology. And before you laugh this video off as another conspiracy theory tall tale, you should know that this time, the source is one of the most credible to ever step forward. UFOs, or UAPs like the cool kids call them, are real. There's no longer any debate on the phenomenon. Any skepticism to their existence is only an excuse to reconcile one's own worldview with the emotionally uncomfortable conclusion that something is flying around in our skies. What exactly this something is, however, is still up for debate. The US government's official investigation into the phenomenon has reached its highest level yet, with multiple open and closed-door briefings to the US Congress. In July 2022, the Defense Department kickstarted a new and very serious investigation into the UAP/UFO phenomenon with the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. The stated goal of this new investigation is to resolve what UAPs are, who is behind them, and if they pose any threat to national security. The last publicly known investigation into the matter, Project Blue Book, was initiated in March 1952 and ran until December 1969. It too was launched in response to a rising number of UFO reports and evolved from Project Sign, set up in 1947. With fears of war and with the communists on the rise, so too were fears of Russian Wunderwaffe. But the rising reports of seemingly extraterrestrial encounters grew to a slowly smoldering panic that the government felt pressure to address. Many people already feared a Soviet nuclear attack, and the government also feared the Soviets could somehow exploit the UFO craze to deliver a sneak-first strike against the US. The investigation looked at thousands of UFO reports from civilian and military sources, though it was the military reports that the investigation staff was most interested in. In 1969, the entire effort was summed up in what would come to be known as the infamous Condon Report, which concluded that UFOs were not worth further study. The Condon Report highlighted the following key findings. Number 1. No UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of a threat to our national security. Number 2. There was no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. And number 3, there was no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. However, the report met with immediate controversy after it was discovered that the scientist in charge of the investigation, physicist Edward Condon, had joked about the UFO phenomenon being all a flap. But he wasn't supposed to reach that conclusion until the end of the formal investigation. This seriously undermined Condon's credibility as an academic, as it was clear he was biased and not acting on scientific principles during the investigation. Further criticism arose in 1967 from a memo leaked where one of the investigators assured colleagues that they could expect the study to conclude that UFO observations had no basis in reality. The formal investigation into UFOs was biased from the start. J. Allen Hynek, an astronomer hired by the Air Force to investigate UFOs starting with Project Sign, had initially been deeply skeptical of the phenomenon, until the evidence changed his mind. He called the report unscientific and avoidant of the inevitable conclusion that there were still a significant number of UFO encounters that could not be explained. Over 700, in fact. The official investigation into UFOs was shuttered, but it seems the official government interest in the phenomenon continued. Despite this, a culture of ridicule has pervaded the topic and been extremely useful for silencing witnesses. And only now, with US supremacy challenged by the rising power of China, is that culture being retracted. According to the official UAP investigation, this culture of ridicule has actively hampered efforts to investigate UAPs as pilots and other witnesses are intimidated into remaining quiet. Given that some of these UAPs could represent advanced foreign adversary threats, the U.S. military has done a full 180 on its protocols on reporting UFOs and UAPs, with the Navy and Air Force both issuing new guidelines to their aviators and encouraging them to come forward. The new investigation into UAPs, AARO, is yielding reams of data, though much of it remains classified. However, it is now known that UAPs have been detected by U.S. military forces in the air, on the land, and even under the sea. Fears of an advanced foreign threat or a leapfrog technology that could render the U.S. vulnerable to attack are partly driving this new investigation, but so is a serious and growing concern for the safety of American civil and military aircraft, given many near misses reported. So far, the investigation has mirrored Project Blue Book, with the vast majority of cases being identified and explained as man-made or a natural phenomenon. However, there remains a disturbing amount of unresolved incidents. However, there's no indication yet that UAPs are alien in origin, though the AARO has confirmed that some of these unknown objects were physical in nature. We could simply just be dealing with an unknown force of nature we've yet to understand. But one whistleblower has come forward with a bombshell of a story, and he might be the most credible whistleblower to date. David Grush served with the U.S. Air Force before separating and taking a job with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, then transitioning to the National Reconnaissance Office. At the NRO, Grush served as Senior Intelligence Capabilities Interrogation Officer, where he worked as the NRO's senior-most technical advisor for unidentified aerial phenomenon analysis transmedium issues, at least according to him. He was also the NRO's representative to the official UAP investigation between 2019 and 2021. After that, he transitioned back to the NGA, but continued working on UAPs alongside the official UAP investigation and the NGA's own efforts in the area. Now comes the bombshell. According to Grush, the U.S. military has been actively recovering debris from UFOs for decades, starting in the post-World War II era. Even more incredibly, the U.S. has recovered fully intact vehicles. When asked about pilots, he commented cryptically that when dealing with vehicles designed to carry beings, that sometimes those beings were still inside of them at the time of recovery. But the U.S. isn't alone in the effort, as according to Grush, multiple countries have been involved in attempts to recover crashed alien craft. Apparently, the U.S. has been the most successful, however. That's probably a good thing, though we imagine Russia would still manage to bungle the Ukraine invasion even if it was armed with Imperial Star Destroyers, mostly because the conscripts would have stripped it of copper for vodka money. The government's been keeping this crash retrieval process a secret from even Congress itself. It accomplishes this by hiding recovery efforts within multiple agencies involved in UAP activities and the use of secret access programs. Basically, the U.S. government avoids congressional accountability by hiding agencies tasked with recovering UAPs within other agencies, sort of like Russian nesting dolls. Given that secret special access programs have incredibly limited oversight already, even at the highest levels of power, it would be easy to hide these efforts from Congress. Efforts to build the B-2 was at one point part of a special access program, and this classification is reserved only for the absolutely most critical of U.S. secrets. Grush claims that the world is involved in a silent arms race to exploit and develop new technologies based off of crashed alien junk. The U.S. enjoys the efforts of allies and defense contractors in its attempt to retrieve these downed craft, and one can hope that if what Grush says is true, NATO is at least in the lead when it comes to fielding alien-inspired doomsday weapons. Grush, however, cannot offer any details on these craft of their occupants because, by his own admission, he's never even seen one himself. Instead, Grush says that he became a whistleblower because of the ongoing litany of wrongdoing by people involved in these crash retrieval efforts. Per Grush, he was approached by individuals involved in the UAP efforts who disclosed concerns over things such as contracting against federal acquisition regulations, the suppression of information across industrial base and academia, and other unspecified criminalities. With mounting concerns over the illegalities and violations of federal law taking place within the retrieval efforts, Grush says that he directly approached Congress to warn it of what he called a, quote, publicly unknown Cold War for recovered and exploited physical material, a competition with near-peer adversaries over the years to identify UAP crash landings and retrieve the material for exploitation or reverse engineering to garner asymmetric national defense advantages. How Congress took this news is unknown, but what is known is that what actually happened next directly led to Grush deciding to become a whistleblower. And for once, we have a real paper trail to verify at least part of Grush's story. After bringing the retrieval efforts to Congress, Grush claims that he was the target of a harassment and retaliation campaign perpetrated by individuals inside the DoD involved with these special access programs. In May 2022, the harassment became significant enough that Grush filed a complaint of reprisal with the Inspector General of the intelligence community in May 2022. Here's where the story takes a significant twist from just another conspiracy theory to a very real possibility that Grush is telling the truth. Grush's background has been largely confirmed via several paper trails linking him to various agencies he claimed to work for. Grush is mentioned in multiple DoD publications starting in 2011, and multiple sources have confirmed Grush's credentials and story to the journalists who first published his claims, Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean, the authors of the original 2017 New York Times expose that revealed the then secret UAP investigation. However, the sources confirming Grush's story have remained anonymous in order to protect their identities, yet retired Army Colonel Carl Nell was quick to come forward to vouch for Grush's character and his credibility. Nell would make his own explosive revelation in defense of Grush, stating his assertion concerning the existence of a terrestrial arms race occurring sub rosa over the past 80 years, focused on reverse engineering technologies of unknown origins, is fundamentally correct, as is the indisputable realization that at least some of these technologies of unknown origin derive from non-human intelligence. But even more incredibly, we have confirmation that Grush really did file the complaint to the Inspector General of the intelligence community, and their conclusion 1 month later that his complaint was discovered to be, quote, credible and urgent. And unlike other whistleblowers, Grush did not come forward alone. He hired the Compass Rose legal group to represent him as he broke the story, and is represented by Charles McCullough III, who just so happens to himself be a former Inspector General of the intelligence community serving in 2011. Grush is likely to be the single most credible whistleblower on the UFO phenomenon to ever come forward, not just because of his credentials, but the paper trail to back up at least some of his claims. And people are taking note. The House Oversight Committee is even now planning a hearing on UFOs based off Grush's allegations, with the intent of discovering if the Pentagon is indeed keeping secrets from Congress. Per Oversight Committee spokesman Austin Hacker, in addition to recent claims by a whistleblower, reports continue to surface regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena. The House Oversight Committee is following these UAP reports and is in the early stages of planning a hearing. Grush's story is causing serious ripples across the Department of Defense and American culture itself, but it's still in the very early breaking stages, and by the time you see this video, there could be even more explosive revelations. However, it's important to remember that Grush has no physical evidence of any of his claims, and one cannot dispel the possibility that this is all a very elaborate and well-built ruse. U.S. intelligence has long used UFO reports as a cover for top-secret programs, such as the F-117 and the B-2 bomber. It's also an incredibly imaginative community. During the Cold War, the CIA faked a series of vampire attacks in the Philippines in order to scare communist guerrillas, and by all accounts, the effort paid off in spades. So, during a time of rising tensions with China, a near-peer competitor, it's not a stretch to imagine a world where the US government purposefully fabricates a very believable story about recovered alien technology. Grush could be telling the truth, but he also could be a misinformation agent involved in one hell of a ruse. To see the value of such a ruse, try to imagine yourself in China's shoes as very credible news of, quote, multiple nations recovering UFOs and reverse engineering their technology come to light. Imagine that as China, when you look at your own hangars, there's not a single crashed UFO in sight. Suddenly, the fear of the US wielding hyper-advanced weaponry based off recovered alien technology is very real, and you might end up rethinking your approach to international conflicts with America. However, to play devil's advocate, we also have to ask just how many more very well-placed and very credible individuals have come forward before we start accepting that there may be more truth than fable to stories of the US recovering crashed alien craft. The year was 1956 at the White Sands Missile Testing Grounds near Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. The site was used for rocket tests, and Major William Cunningham was involved in collecting debris for tests after a successful launch. Assisting him was Air Force Sergeant Jonathan P. Lovett. It was an uneventful day full of tedious work, and the two men separated to cover different areas of the field. But what had been a predictable day of work was about to become anything but when Cunningham was snapped out of his labor by a blood-curdling scream from nearby. It was Lovett. In the New Mexico desert, danger wasn't uncommon, especially with venomous snakes everywhere. Cunningham was prepared to spring into action with first aid if Lovett had been bitten, but he wasn't prepared for what he found. The scream was Lovett, but what had grabbed him wasn't a snake or anything from this world. Lovett was being dragged, screaming in terror, by a long metal arm that was wrapped around his legs. It was so long Cunningham didn't even know where it ended until he looked up. The long metallic appendage wasn't on the ground, but it was leading up to a large silver disc in the sky, hovering 20 feet overhead. Cunningham stumbled back, frozen in horror, and watched as Lovett was pulled into the sky and into the disc, which rose into the sky and disappeared from view. Major Cunningham radioed for help, but the horror was just beginning. The site was soon swarming with security teams as they combed the missile testing grounds for any sign of Lovett, but nothing could be found. Cunningham was incoherent and kept talking about an inhuman object having kidnapped the soldier, and most believed he suffered a mental breakdown. He was taken to the base hospital for observation and questioning, but he never wavered from his story that Lovett had been taken into the air by a UFO. Backing up his account, according to some sources, the base had a radar system that did pick up an unidentified radar contact near the location at the time Lovett was taken. This caused the military to step up the search, examining the surrounding desert for the next few days. But it would be 3 days before anything was found, and what they found would shock and confuse everyone. It was Sergeant Jonathan Lovett's body, almost 10 miles from where he'd been taken. Many people had suspected Cunningham might have been the one to hurt Lovett, but the location of the body made that near impossible. He wouldn't have had the time to move the body before he radioed for help. The medical examiners concluded that the body had been exposed to the elements for between 1 and 2 days, meaning Lovett had been somewhere else before his body was left in the desert. And he was totally naked. But that wasn't the only thing that was different about his body, and horrors that had been done to him made people think of one thing: aliens. Since the earliest UFO sightings, farmers had claimed their cattle were being taken from fields by UFOs and returned to Earth dead and horribly mutilated, often with precise markings that looked like they'd been done by a machine. Most people believed that there were other explanations, like cults or natural causes like predators and parasites. A ranting farmer claiming that his prize cow Bessie was taken by aliens wasn't usually enough to get federal investigators involved, and there'd been no reports of anything like this happening to a human until now. The on-base medical investigators soon discovered that Lovett's corpse had been horribly mutilated, with his tongue removed at the root and his eyes neatly gouged out. Even more horrifying, his anus and genitalia had been removed, and many of his organs had been taken out. Making it more confusing, they'd all been neatly extracted as if through a surgical procedure. But no mad surgeon would do this to a human. The final revelation about Lovett's body had been the most disturbing. His body had been carefully drained of blood, but the vascular system was intact, not like what happens when someone bleeds to death. Who or what could have done this to Sergeant Jonathan Lovett? The answers aren't going to be easy in coming. Project Grudge Report had 14 files, and the first 12 and the 14th have all been declassified. They discuss various UFO sightings with a good amount of evidence for them, but no conclusive proof. But Grudge Report number 13 isn't mentioned in any official files and remains firmly classified to this day, over 60 years later. That's left many conspiracy and alien abduction buffs with nothing to do but discuss their theories of the Lovett-Cunningham incidents, with each theory having strong proponents but many holes. The most common theory among skeptics is that Major Cunningham killed Lovett, possibly in a dispute over the handling of the debris. But that raises the question, who could have done that to the body so precisely? Cunningham didn't have any medical training, so he would need an accomplice. With the military base having a fully stocked base hospital and on-site doctors, the prevailing theory is that he could have gotten a doctor on the site to find the body, move it further off-site, and do the mutilations to it while the search had been called off to make it look like something otherworldly was the culprit. But this would take a lot of coordination at a time when everyone was being closely watched, and the surgical precision needed was likely beyond the ability of a 1950s Air Force medic. Another theory is that Sergeant Lovett fell prey to the very normal horrors of the desert, and Major Cunningham's exhaustion and confusion led him to see something much more twisted and horrible than what really happened. The New Mexico desert is a dangerous place full of predators, including mountain lions that are large and aggressive enough to drag off and maul a human. That doesn't explain the smooth mutilations, but the long lag time between Lovett's abduction and his body's discovery could mean that he had time to bleed out, and then his body could have been moved again by another predator. But for the descriptions of the body to be accurate, it would take a much more intelligent predator to pull this off, possibly even a human predator. One of the most popular theories about unexplained abductions and mutilation involves dangerous cults of devil worshippers who perform sacrifices to their dark god. Usually they target animals in their rituals, explaining the rash of cattle mutilations. They'd be able to use the sharp knives and surgical tools needed to mutilate an animal or a person and drain them of blood. While there hasn't been a documented case of a murder traced to these cults, there are many unexplained disappearances throughout the US that have never been solved. The kidnapping of a US soldier, though, would be a massive escalation that would bring a much larger police presence down on these cults. And there's no record of a manhunt for the culprits in Lovett's murder, raising the odds that whatever killed him didn't come from this earth. Are there actually aliens stalking the deserts looking for prey to experiment on and then returning them to Earth, their bodies destroyed? The sheer number of cattle found mutilated over the year lends credence to the theory, and the description by Major Cunningham of what took his fellow soldier doesn't match anything from this Earth. The extent of the injuries to Sergeant Lovett's body make it hard to imagine anything human or animal could have done it. But if aliens kidnapped and murdered a US soldier, wouldn't the United States have gone to war? We've all seen the movies where aliens attack and America comes roaring back to blow up their ships. The only question is, with what weapons? In the 1950s, the space program was just getting started. The description Cunningham gave of the ship that took Lovett was several centuries beyond anything humans had, and no one would have known how to track it or fight it. If Sergeant Lovett was killed by an alien ship, the US could have done very little but watch the skies and try to prevent another attack. But there's another theory about the strange death of Sergeant Jonathan Lovett that's gaining more attention as people look into the strange case of Project Grudge File number 13. When a government file is highly classified, like file number 13, good luck at getting a look at it. So where do we know about the Lovett-Cunningham incident from? A pair of prominent conspiracy theorists have claimed to be part of the long-defunct Project Grudge, which allowed them to see the original file. The first, the notorious UFO theorist William Cooper, claimed to have seen it in the 70s and was the first to make public the supposed horrific deaths of Lovett's mutilation. William English, a former Green Beret captain, was working as a U.S. security detail at a base in England when he supposedly got a hold of the file. Colin Bertram, who collected much of the information for a History Channel special of the case, also mentioned that the case was discussed by Frank Joseph, a controversial racist conspiracy theorist who believed a war with extraterrestrials was coming. These three accounts have been circulating, furthering the spread of the rumors about the incident. But what has the government actually said about it? The conspiracy theorists will tell you that the government doesn't want you to know the truth, that they scrubbed all record of the incident from the books, and they would be right. If you comb the military files for any record of the strange death of Sergeant Jonathan Lovett, you'll find nothing. Nor will you find any record of what happened to Major Cunningham after his horrible discovery. But they've gone further, because you won't find any record of either man ever being part of the United States Air Force, or in fact having existed at all. Did the government scrub all record of these men from existence, including everyone who knew them, to cover up this horrible incident? Or did they just never exist at all? What we know about Project Grudge File number 13 is that a man supposedly died horribly, but there's no record of any of it happening. And the only claims that it did happen come from a trio of discredited conspiracy theorists who claim they somehow got a look at the most highly classified government document of all time. And the government, which supposedly covered up the case for decades, let them go around telling everyone and even publish books on the incident. Was the Black Ops assassin who covered up the incident on leave or something? The truth may be out there, but the truth about the Lovett-Cunningham incident may be much closer to Earth, and there's no proof it ever happened. But anyone who reads about it is probably still going to keep a closer eye on the stars. Something doesn't feel right. It's as if you're being watched, but no one else is around. Stars fill the night sky, the wind gently blows, rustling the leaves on the trees around you. Then a bright light flashes on directly above you. The air seems to shimmer as an alien spacecraft decloaks. The beam of light encompasses you as your feet lift off the ground. As you look up, you're pulled toward the levitating flying saucer. You scream, but the force field around you refuses to let your cries for help escape. There are those among us who believe that there is no such thing as aliens, but to think that Earth is the only planet with life on it in a universe made of trillions of stars, each with several planets orbiting around them just like our solar system, is the epitome of human hubris. There are almost certainly other worlds with alien life on them. Perhaps these planets are inhabited only by microbes, or maybe there are advanced civilizations billions of light years away in an exotic galaxy we'll never know about. The point is that just because there are aliens out there doesn't necessarily mean they've visited Earth and probed its people. Then again, maybe we have been visited by curious aliens. In this case, how would an alien spaceship actually work? What technology would it need? And is it even possible to travel through vast distances of space in a reasonable amount of time? The craziest part of it all is that while you are watching this video, aliens could be watching you without you knowing it. The universe is around 13.7 billion years old. Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago, and humans evolved less than 1 million years ago. This leaves a lot of time for alien civilizations to evolve and develop advanced technology to explore the cosmos. Any alien species that visits Earth has an understanding of the universe we can only dream of right now. The first thing you need to know about alien spaceships is that they can move extremely fast. If aliens live in our closest neighboring solar system, Alpha Centauri, it would take them just under 4.5 years to reach Earth if they traveled at the speed of light. That seems doable, but the likelihood of intelligent life being that close is pretty small. Therefore, aliens must travel much further distances if they're visiting us here on Earth. It's possible that an alien spaceship could contain cryotubes that would put the crew asleep during a long journey across the cosmos. Even if their ship could travel at the speed of light, every single mission to Earth could take hundreds, thousands, or even millions of years, depending on where the home planet is. The cryotubes would put the aliens into a frozen stasis, so their bodies could not age and their cells would not degrade as they made the long flight to Earth. This could be done by subjecting the bodies to intensely cold temperatures, but the aliens would need to find a way to thaw themselves and restart their life processes once it's time for them to wake up. Although the alien spacecraft might not actually need any type of cryosleep machinery at all, we don't know how long alien species live for. If the average life expectancy of an alien is 1 million years, then spending a few decades traveling to and from Earth isn't that big of a deal. Maybe the aliens have downloaded their consciousness into machines and they can live forever. Then it really wouldn't matter how long the journey took. Cryotubes are one technology that aliens probably need aboard their spacecraft, but a bigger problem is how do they get their ship from their homeworld to Earth? Like the early explorers on Earth, maybe the aliens would use sails to travel across the void of space. Solar sails or light sails are gigantic lightweight sheets made of aluminized mylar that use photons to move across the cosmos, like the sails of a ship use the wind to move across the ocean. Solar sails could use the photons released from stars, but these powerful generators can be few and far between. Instead, the alien homeworld could build a giant laser and shoot it directly toward Earth. The laser wouldn't be harmful to our planet as it would only consist of photons that would either pass right through us or be deflected by Earth's magnetic shield. But the alien spaceship could use its solar sails to ride the photon laser beam all the way to Earth. The beauty of spaceships that use light sails is that they will constantly accelerate once they're in the stream of photon particles. At first, the alien craft connected to the solar sail would be moving slowly, but as time went on, the constant acceleration would cause the speed to ramp up until the vessel was moving at close to the speed of light. This would allow the alien ship to travel across the galaxy while not having to use any energy for thrust. The energy saved could then be used for life support systems, the return trip, and to explore strange planets like Earth. For the sake of argument, let's hypothesize that aliens don't live forever and need to travel across the universe quickly so they can visit Earth and return home before the weekend ends. What technology could the alien spaceship need to be equipped with in order to allow them to traverse the cosmos in the blink of an eye? Alien astronomers and scientists have been exploring the cosmos for millions of years. They've developed sophisticated navigation devices that track down naturally occurring wormholes that connect 2 points in space-time. Maybe one wormhole connects the alien's region of space with our own, and they're using it as a bridge to come to Earth. The alien spacecraft would need to be equipped with special shielding or a force field that would allow them to safely pass through the wormhole without being crushed. They would also need a gravity-altering device to make sure the wormhole didn't collapse with them inside it. If these problems could be overcome, they would be able to travel across the universe almost instantaneously. However, wormholes are likely pretty rare in the universe, and a wormhole that connects an alien-specific region of space with ours seems highly improbable. Luckily, the alien spaceships are equipped with wormhole-creating particles. Us humans have no idea what these would look like or what they'd be made from, but theoretically, if there were particles that could tear a hole in the fabric of space-time, then travel between any two points might be possible. Wormhole opening technology seems highly unlikely even for an advanced alien spacecraft. However, warp drives might be much more suitable to the aliens' needs. Rather than only traveling between 2 points in space, a warp drive would allow the alien ship to travel through space faster than the speed of light. However, you might remember from a different infographic show video that the laws of physics prevent anything from moving faster than the speed of light. So, how would this be possible? The alien ship would need to be equipped with a device that could warp the space around the vessel. This would create a warp bubble that would stretch and relax the space-time around the craft, allowing the alien ship to move across space faster than the speed of light, since it's not technically the object that's moving. The fabric of space-time would warp and unwarp over and over again, taking the ship with it. And since space-time doesn't have a speed limit, the aliens wouldn't be breaking the laws of physics as they zoomed around the universe. Humans have no idea how warp drive technology would work with our current technology and understanding of physics, but if aliens have visited us, it's likely this is their key mode of transportation. Regardless of what type of propulsion the alien spacecraft uses, there's one main problem they have to overcome before they can venture out into the universe. In order to make it to Earth, the alien spaceship would need to generate a massive amount of power. There are a few ways they might be able to do this. Everything from the engines and the computers to life support systems aboard the alien spacecraft needs to get their power from somewhere. Aliens have found ways to harness energy from exotic particles in space, or generate cold fusion in their reactor cores to create massive amounts of power. Here on Earth, we're exploring ways to equip spacecraft with fusion nuclear generators and antimatter drives. If we assume that these are the best options for aliens to use as their power sources, their systems might look something like this. At the heart of the alien spacecraft, there is a nuclear power station. It would not look like a nuclear power station we have on Earth, but would be self-contained and easily able to fit into a single room. The amount of fuel needed to generate enough energy to move the spacecraft around the cosmos and keep all the systems running isn't a problem, as these nuclear generators run off hydrogen atoms. Hydrogen is abundant in the universe as it's the main fuel source for stars and found in the atmospheres of almost every planet. The aliens would not need to store a lot of hydrogen because if they ever ran low, they could just swing by the nearest gas giant and refuel. The energy released from their fusion reaction of two hydrogen atoms fusing into helium is then used to power the entire ship. The best part is that the helium can then be repurposed for other uses or ejected back into space. Aliens might take a different approach than fission if they plan on traveling large distances that might not have any celestial bodies within them. The universe is composed mostly of empty space, and the distance between solar systems can be incredibly far. In these cases, the alien spaceship might use antimatter engines to generate the power they need. Scientists hypothesize that the amount of antimatter needed to power spacecraft from Earth to Mars is only a millionth of a gram. Therefore, a gram of antimatter could carry a vessel 1,000,000 times the distance between Earth and Mars, or roughly 125 trillion miles. The energy for this type of engine would be created when antimatter and regular matter come into contact and annihilate. The best part about this type of reaction is that 100% of the mass of the antimatter is converted to energy when the reaction occurs. Nothing is lost, which makes it extremely efficient. The reactions are also 1,000 times more powerful than a nuclear fission reaction, meaning the engine would need to be secured within a very powerful containment field. The aliens likely overcame this problem long ago when they initially started exploring the solar system, but it might be wise to have a backup generator that runs off of fusion just to power the antimatter container field and make sure that it never fails. The aliens built a magnetic storage system that separates the antimatter from normal matter, so it doesn't annihilate prematurely, vaporizing the alien spacecraft and everything in the surrounding area, including any planets, such as Earth. This magnetic field moves the antimatter from its storage area into a feed system. It's here where the antimatter is held until the engines need to generate more power. Once it's ejected from the feed system, the antimatter and regular matter come into contact and immediately annihilate, causing an enormous burst of power. This energy will be used in the systems all over the ship. There will likely be excess energy created as well, which can then be siphoned into the magnetic rocket thrusters. When the blast is released into space, it will propel the alien spacecraft forward and could serve as an alternate mode of transportation to explore the surrounding area. So little antimatter is required to keep all the systems going and provide propulsion that this will likely be one of the main power sources aboard all alien spacecraft. Everyone knows the iconic shape of the flying saucer. Yet, there are very few man-made aircraft that look like this. Why do aliens prefer this shape, and how would it be possible for their spacecraft to move seamlessly in any direction? The answer is by using electrodes and the gases in a planet's atmosphere. The shape of a flying saucer works particularly well if aliens want to have the ability to move their vessels in any direction at a moment's notice. The hull is shaped in a way that creates very little air resistance or drag, but it's the electrodes placed all around the outside of the alien craft that gives it the ability to hover in place and then shoot off in any direction. The way the electrodes work is that they use an electrical charge to change the gases in the air into plasma. On average, our atmosphere's negative and positive particles are pretty much balanced. However, by heating up the air, the electrodes cause some particles to lose their electrons and gives them a positive charge. The alien spacecraft then uses its electrodes to generate an electrical current into the newly formed plasma, which then causes it to push against the neutral air around it. As the non-charged air pushes back on the ionized plasma, it also pushes on the alien spaceship in the opposite direction, propelling the craft in the desired direction. If the electrical current is equal on all sides of the spaceship, the flying saucer will just hover in place. Then all the aliens have to do is change the intensity of the electrical current on the opposite side of the ship from where they want to move, and it will be able to zip across the planet. Perhaps the flying saucer shape is not just used for aerodynamics, but also because it allows for an even distribution of electrodes across the whole of the vessel. This form of propulsion does not require any fuel or thrust to move the alien craft. Therefore, it would be relatively silent as it flew around observing humans. The power to turn on the electrodes could come straight from the aliens' antimatter engines, solar panels, or any other form of electricity-creating device. If we're honest with ourselves, then we know the aliens are pretty sneaky. If they weren't, then everyone around the world would have seen a UFO at this point. Therefore, the alien spacecraft must be equipped with some kind of cloaking device. The system might fail from time to time, which could explain why there are UFO sightings every now and then. However, cloaking would be an absolute necessity for any spacefaring aliens who want to observe local populations without being seen. The way alien cloaking devices could work is by bending the light around the spacecraft. In theory, the aliens could use special lenses that cause any light that comes into contact with a ship to bend so it's never reflected back at an observer. This would need to be done in such a way that the light is not absorbed by the lenses or reflected directly off them, but is bent so the light from behind the spacecraft still reaches the observer's eye. If they did use this form of cloaking, there would be a sort of ripple effect, like when you look at a straw going from the air into a glass of water. Although the straw doesn't actually break or shift, the change in medium causes the light reflected off the straw to bend differently. The same type of effect might occur with the alien cloaking device, causing it to distort the image your eyes should be seeing. You probably wouldn't be able to make out the exact shape of the spaceship that was using the cloaking device, but you would notice that there was something there if you looked hard enough. This is not 100% ideal for the aliens that want to remain hidden from humans. However, there is another form of cloaking device that might solve all their problems. Rather than using lenses to bend light around a spaceship, the aliens might use thousands or millions of little cameras and screens to hide their vessel. On the whole of the ship, tons of extremely high-definition screens project images of the background and landscape. When these screens are turned on, the camera on the back of the ship signals the screens in the front of the ship to project what they're seeing. This is done all around the alien spacecraft, making it completely invisible. The aliens would need super high-tech cameras, screens, and computers that could process millions of images at once, even while the spacecraft was moving. But since aliens are able to travel across vast distances of space to visit us, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. This brings us to the technology used to collect samples for their studies of Earth. Aliens didn't come all this way just to observe. At some point, they need to gather information and samples. Landing on the surface of Earth is too risky, as someone might accidentally stumble on their spacecraft. So the aliens use their tractor beam to pull cows, cars, and people into their vessels for further analysis. The tractor beams might use a couple of different methods to raise their specimens off the ground and bring them aboard. The use of high-powered magnets would be great for lifting metal objects like cars. These magnets can also be used to pull other aircraft toward the spaceship, where they could be stored safely in the alien docking bay. However, not all objects of interest are metallic. For example, a large magnet would never be able to pull a human off the ground and into a spacecraft. Therefore, one way aliens might get around this problem is by using incredibly loud speakers to create high-pressure vortexes that could pull things toward the ship. This would likely be extremely loud and painful for anyone caught in the beam, but it could work if the sound was concentrated around the object or person. A more viable option for a tractor beam might be to use what's called a solenoidal light beam. This would look sort of like a tornado of light that would wrap around an object and then slowly pull it toward the spacecraft. In tests here on Earth, the concept of using a helix of light to move objects seems to be viable, but only at the microscopic level. Therefore, the light beam would need to be pretty intense to lift a human off the ground and into the alien ship. There would be a delicate balancing act between bombarding the space around someone with high-energy particles without burning them to a crisp. Perhaps this is why scorch marks found on alien abduction victims and the planet's surface around where they are abducted seem not to be all that uncommon. An alien craft would also need to be able to defend itself. In space, there are countless objects that could cause hull breaches or wreak havoc on alien engines. On the planets the spaceship visits, there might be hostile entities that try to destroy their ship. Therefore, it's imperative that the alien ship has some kind of force field. The hull of the alien ship is made out of an immensely strong, lightweight material, but that might not be enough protection. The alien spacecraft could use electromagnetism to deflect incoming objects. In order for this to work, the object the spacecraft is trying to deflect must first be charged up, so that when it comes into contact with the electromagnetic force field, it's repelled. The alien ship could do this by using an advanced tracking system and firing an ionized bolt of energy at the incoming projectile. This would charge up the particles around the outside of the object, and then the force field would be adjusted to match the opposite polarity of the now ionized object. The electromagnetic force between the two oppositely charged particles would repel each other and keep the ship safe. Another protective measure that alien crafts might be equipped with is a high-powered annihilation shield. The alien ship could have an outer hull and an inner hull that has an electric current flowing between the two. When an object either pushes the outer hull and inner hull together or penetrates them, it'll complete a circuit, and the electricity flowing through both hulls will be dumped into the object. This will only work for metal objects and anything that can close a circuit, but the effects would be devastating. All of the electricity coursing around the ship will instantaneously enter the object, essentially vaporizing it. The problem with this shield is that it'll need time to charge up before it can be used again. Therefore, if multiple objects were to impact the ship one right after another, there might not be enough time to get the shield back online before the second impact. However, alien spacecraft have likely found a way around this problem by implementing multiple types of force fields on each vessel. As a last line of defense, an alien craft might need to fight back. At this point, they have done everything they can to observe in secret. But due to some unforeseen circumstances, humans have started to become hostile, and their defensive measures have all failed. The alien ship is equipped with several sets of lasers and highly devastating weapons. They launch antimatter missiles first. Inside each one is a small core that annihilates on impact. The antimatter inside them powers the missiles, so they can travel for incredibly long distances. In fact, the alien spacecraft could be on the other side of the solar system when they launch the antimatter missiles. There would still be plenty of fuel to destroy pretty much any object once it reaches its target. When the missile impacts its target, the magnetic field holding the antimatter in stasis is deactivated. The antimatter comes into contact with regular matter and annihilates. This releases a huge amount of energy that consumes the target and destroys it instantly. The alien spacecraft also has lasers and particle beams that it can use with pinpoint accuracy. The particle beams are some of the most deadly weapons in the universe. These work by using a huge amount of energy to shoot hydrogen atoms along with free electrons and protons through a tube aimed at the intended target. When these high-energy particles impact another object, they transfer their energy to the atoms within it. This causes a cascading effect as more and more atoms become energized, eventually resulting in the target exploding. This can be done to anything that's made up of matter, which is everything in the known universe except energy. The scariest part about the alien particle beam is that it doesn't matter what size the object is. Anything can be blown up with enough hits from the particle beam. Human soldiers would be instantly vaporized. Any aircraft trying to defend our planet would blow up in a fiery explosion. The planet itself could even be destroyed if billions of spaceships all bombarded the Earth with particle beams at once. That being said, we're still here, and it seems like if the alien ships have visited our planet, they've remained pretty well hidden. Therefore, it's more likely that any alien craft that has been to Earth has been here for exploratory purposes and not to conduct a planetary invasion. Perhaps in the future, aliens will reveal themselves to us and help us unlock the mysteries of the universe that allow them to build such wonderful spacecraft. Even in a deep state of hypnosis, Barney Hill was clearly racked with terror, remembering that dark and impossible night in the White Mountains that took place almost a year before. The hypnotist, Dr. Benjamin Simon, was taking careful notes. The words Barney said shook him to his core. "Oh, those eyes, they're there in my brain. I was told to close my eyes because I saw two eyes coming close to mine, and I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes. All I see are these eyes. I'm not even afraid that they're not connected to a body. They're just there. They're just up close to me, pressing against my eyes." So immersed in these traumatic memories, Barney began to scream in horror. "The eyes! The eyes!" Dr. Simon lunged forward, trying desperately to comfort Barney as the confusion and the horror washed over him anew. What had Barney seen? What event would make him and his wife Betty a part of the history of UFOs and alien abduction forever. This is the story of what many consider to be the very first reported case of alleged alien abduction. Bill Ross, a professor emeritus at UNH, even described the duo at the center of the story as the Adam and Eve of alien abduction. It all began on a dark, lonely mountain road, New Hampshire, September 19, 1961, a little after 10 p.m. It was a cold night in New Hampshire's White Mountains, where Betty and Barney Hill were cruising down Route 3 in their '57 Chevy, accompanied by their adorable dachshund, Delcy. Barney was in the driver's seat, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel in time with the music coming from the car stereo. Betty was poring over the memories of the vacation they were returning from, Montreal and Niagara Falls, the trip of a lifetime, or at least it was meant to be. In truth, the vacation that was meant to be a late honeymoon for the two had turned out to be a disaster. Betty had been frustrated by the English-French language barrier in the largely francophone area of Canada, and Barney had been gripped with a great feeling of anxious foreboding, as though something terrible was about to happen. In a sense, he was right. Their catastrophe of a vacation was soon to be overshadowed by a life-changing phenomenon waiting in the twinkling stars above. While they may have shared their first names with the characters from the Flintstones, by all accounts, Betty and Barney were a perfectly normal and well-adjusted couple. Betty was a social worker who attended the University of New Hampshire, and Barney was a veteran and an alumni of Temple University who then worked for the United States Postal Service, and both were fixtures at their local Unitarian church. The couple was a rare interracial pairing. Betty was white and Barney was black, hardly seen in rural New Hampshire in the early 60s, when miscegenation laws were still on the books in 30 different states. They were also active in the civil rights movement, both being members of the local chapter of the NAACP. Barney even sat on the board of the local United States Commission on Civil Rights. These were educated, well-respected pillars of their local community. In short, credible witnesses, hardly your stereotypical paranoid UFO cranks. But that didn't stop them from having an encounter straight out of an episode of The X-Files. It was just south of Lancaster that Betty noticed a strange light in the sky. At first she thought it must have been a shooting star, but this was the only shooting star she'd ever seen that was moving upwards. How strange, it was moving from below the moon to the west of it. Betty was no professional astronomer, but she knew this wasn't right and immediately alerted Barney to its presence. Barney had been in the U.S. Army prior to joining the Postal Service. He still kept a habit of carrying his old service pistol around with him on long trips, so he'd seen his fair share of aerial activity, but he'd never seen anything like this. The light looked to be getting bigger and brighter. Wait, was it getting closer to the car? The couple parked their car in a picnic area near Twin Mountains to give Delcy some exercise in the middle of their long car ride. While Betty walked the dog, Barney decided to satisfy his curiosity, reaching into the back of his car to find his favorite pair of binoculars. He grabbed them by their leather strap and lifted them to his eyes, and decided to take a closer look at the strange twinkling object up in the sky. It definitely wasn't a star, but it wasn't like any plane he'd seen before either. It was a disc-shaped object covered in a row of multicolored lights. Barney immediately called over to Betty, who took a look through the binoculars too. She saw the exact same unfamiliar glowing object as Barney, so either they weren't seeing things or they were both losing it. Either way, it seemed like a cause for concern. Betty immediately remembered an account her sister had given her of seeing a flying saucer a few years earlier. At the time, Betty had just humored her. She didn't believe in spacemen, but now she was beginning to entertain the idea. Barney took back the binoculars and looked again. His rational mind was working overtime to create some kind of logical explanation for this. He had a genius-level IQ of 140, so he certainly wasn't the kind of man to immediately jump to fantastical conclusions. Perhaps it was a matter of perspective. Maybe it was a passenger jet heading from Vermont to Montreal, and they were just getting a side-on view of it. That seemed reasonable enough, just a trick of angles, until he saw the object begin to lower and start moving toward them. He swallowed hard and tried to remain calm, saying, "Betty, get Delcy back in the car. It's getting late. I think we should leave." Betty had no complaints. The Hills and their dog piled back into the Chevy and took off from the picnic area across Route 3 via Franconia Notch, driving slowly to keep an eye on the strange object without attracting any undue attention from it. Betty watched the object follow them, passing across the top of a signal tower on Cannon Mountain and emerging near a series of cliff faces known as the Old Man of the Mountain due to their distinctive face-like shapes. This gave Betty enough perspective to start estimating the size of the craft. She guessed it was maybe 60 feet across, and it seemed to be rotating as though this motion powered its ability to fly. Delcy was starting to get anxious in the car, but the Hills found it impossible to get their minds off the craft as it got closer and closer, silently stalking their Chevy. No plane could get that close, no helicopter could be that quiet. The curiosity was too great now. Barney decided to stop the car and get a closer look, having no idea that this seemingly innocent decision would lead to the worst night of his life. He slammed on the brakes in the middle of the quiet highway a mile south of Indian Head and stepped out, sliding his pistol out of his pocket and aiming his binoculars at the rapidly descending object. What he saw struck him with mortal terror. The craft had illuminated windows, and behind them, 8 to 11 strange humanoid beings stood watching him. They were wearing glossy black uniforms and military-style caps. His jaw dropped. This was impossible. While Betty was desperately asking her husband what he was seeing, the beings, which were definitely not human, scattered inside the craft to a large control console. Only one, possibly the leader, remained at the window, holding Barney's gaze. He felt strange electrical sensations fizzling all through his body as a voice spoke directly into his mind. "Stay where you are and keep looking," it said. Barney could barely move. Barney began to panic, screaming, "We need to get out of here! They're going to capture us!" to his wife as the craft descended, releasing fin-like protrusions from its sides. The two were able to break free of the strange psychic control that the telepathic beings were exerting over them and scrambled back to their car. They floored it, driving as fast as they could in the direction of their hometown of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and they would arrive there, just not the way they expected. The last thing that either of them remembered after that was hearing some strange beeping noises, like the kind that happened when you pressed buttons on a microwave, emanating from the trunk of their car. Their bodies began to tingle, and what seemed like a huge fiery orb blocked their route. Within the space of a blink, it was over, and they regained lucidity, 35 miles south of Franconia Notch. They had somehow moved in the wrong direction and lost track of 2 hours of time in the process. Their dog Delcy was hiding under one of the seats. The couple had 1,000 questions, but they all fit neatly under one. What the hell had happened? Their first priority was getting out of the mountains and returning home, which they were finally able to do by dawn, feeling tired, confused, and disoriented. But sadly for the Hills, their anomalous experience wasn't over. It was only just beginning. As in the hours and days following the incident, they began to notice increasingly strange things, clues that might have held answers to the mysterious events that happened the night before. Both of their watches were broken and never worked again after that night, as though some force had interfered with the mechanisms. The strap of Barney's binoculars was also now broken, as though somebody had yanked them off of his body during a struggle. Betty's dress was also stained and torn, further suggesting that the couple had indeed been involved in some kind of altercation. There were also strange scuffs on Barney's shoes and shiny circles on the back of the car that hadn't been there before. More peculiar still, when the couple held a compass next to the shiny circles, it went haywire, indicating that they had somehow been magnetized, though for reasons neither member of the couple could really understand. But it wasn't just the objects. There were changes to the bodies and the minds of Betty and Barney Hill. Betty, for reasons unknown to her, felt the need to pack the luggage they'd brought back at the back of the house rather than inside it, perhaps as a subconscious acknowledgement of the fear that their possessions had somehow been contaminated by the experience. This was doubly true for her ruined dress, which she later noticed was covered in a strange pink powder that she was unable to identify. The effects on Barney would be even more pronounced. He experienced severe soreness of the back and neck and the strangest sense that somehow semen had been harvested from him. He compulsively checked his family jewels in the bathroom, but thankfully found that there was nothing amiss. The couple took long showers just in case they were irradiated or contaminated, and when they tried to recall the chronology of the events that took place after they tried to escape from the beings on the flying saucer, their memories failed them. It was like they'd been deleted from the minds of Betty and Barney Hill. Someone or something didn't want them to know what had happened that night. In this time of uncertainty, Barney wanted to return to something familiar, the military. Their first port of call was to report what they'd seen to the Air Force, speaking to an officer at the local Portsmouth Air Force Base. However, they omitted certain details from their report, worrying that they'd be just thought of as insane. While the officer they spoke to told them that they had most likely just seen Jupiter and mistook it for a craft, he still reported their story to the infamous Project Blue Book, which any ardent UFO fans in our audience will be intimately familiar with. Project Blue Book was the long-running Pentagon UFO research project running from 1947 through 1969 and cataloging 12,618 sightings in that time. However, the project didn't look kindly on the Hill incident, filing it under insufficient data. Next came the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, or NICAP. The couple spoke for 6 hours to Boston-based astronomer Walter N. Webb, who was also a member of NICAP. While the couple still couldn't recall what happened during the period of lost time, they were able to give a comprehensive account of everything else. Webb would later respond, "They were telling the truth, and the incident probably occurred exactly as reported, except for some minor uncertainties and technicalities that must be tolerated in any such observations where human judgment is involved." But this wasn't the end. In fact, the strangest parts of the story were yet to reveal themselves. Around 10 days after the encounter, when Barney was eager to put the whole incident behind them and forget it happened, Betty began having strange, vivid dreams. Dreams that she believed may have been related to their encounter on that fateful September night. These dreams occurred for 5 straight days, seemingly building in detail and intensity each time, more like memories than products of the imagination. Betty felt compelled to write down the dreams, and certain interesting little details started to accumulate. One dream seemed to be almost a continuation of the time that they lost in the night of the abduction. Betty was stopped with her husband at the roadblock in their '56 Chevy when strange men surrounded their car. At this point in the dream, she lost consciousness. When she awoke, 2 small men were forcing her to walk through a forest, and when she turned, she saw Barney walking through the forest, trance-like, behind her. This was the first time post-incident that either of them were able to recall what their extraterrestrial captors looked like. They ranged from 5 feet to around 5 feet 4 inches tall, with grayish skin, dark eyes, black hair, bluish lips, and prominent noses. They wore similar military garbs that Barney could recall seeing when he first stared at the craft through his binoculars, matching uniforms with caps like those of a military cadet. In the dream, after being marched through the forest, the aliens took Betty and Barney back to their car. The leader of the aliens told them to watch the craft take off, which they did, at which point the couple started driving home as though nothing strange had happened at all. Could this have been a fragment of what happened that night? And if it was, what happened before they were marched back to their car? Another dream held potential answers. Betty recalled being led into the metallic craft, along with Barney, where they underwent unethical experimentation from the aliens, directed by 2 main figures which she identified as the leader and the examiner. While the leader directed them all, the examiner bound Betty to a table and injected her in the navel with an unknown substance. This caused her a moment of excruciating pain before quickly dissipating after some more telepathic encouragement from the leader. Many people refer to the Betty and Barney Hill abduction as the first alien abduction because it defined so many of the recurring traits we would see manifest in later accounts of alien abductions and their aftermaths. One of these is the common concept of missing time, experienced by the Hills when they suddenly regained awareness far from their intended locations, having lost track of 2 hours. In more fanciful cases, such as the Hills, this missing time is often seen as the result of alien memory manipulation technology. And in more mundane cases, memory loss is theorized to be the result of traumatic repression. And one thing can be said for certain: for Barney and Betty, this incident was definitely traumatic. Betty's nightmares were often extremely distressing, and Barney, while he showed fewer outward signs of distress, was experiencing ever-worsening anxiety over the incident. Soon enough, they turned to a psychiatrist and neurologist, Dr. Benjamin Simon, for help, a man who also happened to be a professional therapeutic hypnotist. The deal was struck. Over a series of sessions, Dr. Simon would help them excavate the memories of what happened that night. But nobody was ready for just how strange and disturbing some of these sessions would be. Betty and Barney were given their sessions separately in order to make sure they couldn't influence one another. Certain details seemed oddly consistent across both their accounts. The 2 of them were stopped in the road for some kind of blockade when the strange aliens surrounded them and took them out of the car, at which point they were both led up a metal ramp into the spacecraft that had been stalking them. Once on the craft, the 2 were separated and taken into different experimentation rooms, with curved walls and metal tables in the center. They were each asked to climb onto the tables, at which point a battery of tests began, involving taking scrapings of their skin, clipping their fingernails, and taking a large number of samples with needles. After Betty's examination was complete, the aliens started asking her questions about her husband. They seemed particularly fascinated by the fact that Barney's teeth could come out, leading Betty to explain the apparently foreign concept of dentures to the beings. While Barney was undergoing significantly more traumatic tests, including probable semen extraction, Betty continued to converse with the leader. She asked him where the craft had flown from, and the leader jokes, "If you don't know where you are, there wouldn't be any point in telling you where I am." Despite this, the leader did show Betty a star map, which she was able to recreate under Dr. Simon's hypnosis. The map would be documented in the 1966 John G. Fuller book, The Interrupted Journey, along with the effects that the hypnosis had on Barney. While Betty seemed to have had a positively cordial relationship with the leader, Barney's hypnosis sessions often devolved into incoherent yelling, screaming, and crying, all of which Dr. Simon recorded in their extensive sessions. Dr. Simon, for the record, never said that he believed the couple was lying, even if he doubted the actual facts of the matter. He never doubted that the Hills truly believed what they were telling him, describing it as a singular psychological aberration. While the story of Betty and Barney Hill's abduction did end up circulating through the media machine, especially among local communities, the Hills together didn't actively seek out publicity. They were forthcoming with their information when asked, but neither seemed particularly motivated by the fame their case had given them. In 1968, 2 years after The Journey Interrupted was published, elementary school teacher and hobbyist astronomer Marjorie Fish would revisit the star map that Betty drew under hypnosis. Assuming one of the data points was Earth's sun, she determined that the aliens came from the Zeta Reticuli star system. This is the reason why the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case is also sometimes known as the Zeta Reticuli incident. However, Fish's research on this was highly contentious, drawing support from some, such as the aforementioned NICAP member Walter N. Webb, while drawing heavy criticism from others. Perhaps the most famous of these critics was celebrity astronomer Carl Sagan, who even took the time to debunk the Zeta Reticuli theory in his iconic TV show Cosmos. When it came to the Betty and Barney Hill case, it seemed difficult to find a true consensus on anything. Tragically, Barney would die young, passing away from a stroke at age 46 on February 25, 1969. It's not impossible that the stress and anxiety that defined his years after the incident, which caused Barney to develop painful ulcers, may have also raised his blood pressure and increased his chances of suffering an intracerebral hemorrhage. This left Betty to share their story with the public alone, though things were never quite the same for Betty after Barney passed away. In her later years, Betty seemed to fall victim to age-related cognitive decline. Prominent UFO skeptic Robert Schaefer in the Skeptical Inquirer magazine illustrated this in the following sad anecdotes. I was present at the National UFO Conference in New York City in 1980, at which Betty presented some of the UFO photos she had taken. She showed what must have been far more than 200 slides, mostly of blips, blurs, and blobs against a dark background. These were supposed to be UFOs coming in close, chasing her car, landing, etc. After her talk had exceeded about twice its allotted time, Betty was literally jeered off the stage by what had been at first a sympathetic audience. This incident, witnessed by many of ufology's leaders and top activists, removed any lingering doubts about Betty's credibility. She had none. In 1995, Betty Hill wrote a self-published book, A Common Sense Approach to UFOs. It's filled with delusional stories, such as seeing entire squadrons of UFOs in flight and a truck levitating above the freeway. After the shocking death of Barney, Betty felt increasingly isolated in the last few decades of her life, as mainstream institutions increasingly treated her and her experience as a kind of fringe case. This resulted in her seeking understanding and community among less and less credible conspiracy theorists and UFO believers, who also dipped their toes in phenomena like Bigfoot, black helicopter conspiracy theories, and cattle mutilation. Even other UFO enthusiasts were starting to note Betty's sadly degrading relationship with reality. She went for an evening of UFO spotting with ufologist John Oswald, who later said of the event, quote, "She is not really seeing UFOs, but she is calling them that." Mrs. Hill was unable to distinguish between a landed UFO and a streetlight. Regardless of the truth of the original encounter, few were inclined to believe a word out of Betty's mouth in the 1990s and beyond. She never moved on from Barney, the love of her life, and never remarried. She would eventually pass away from cancer in 2004, leaving little more than the legacy of an event that may or may not have happened decades before. So we've heard from the people who truly believe that Barney and Betty Hill's abduction happened. But what about the other camp? There have been a number of interesting skeptic perspectives on the Betty and Barney Hill incident, critiquing it from different angles. One of those came from one of the Hill's neighbors, fantasy and science fiction author James D. McDonald. After analyzing the accounts provided by Betty, he claimed that her description of the craft's movements over Cannon Mountain perfectly matched a driver's perception of an aircraft warning beacon situated nearby. As for the more colorful parts of the account, McDonald suggests that sleep deprivation from the long trip, general stress, and false memories recalled under hypnosis could adequately explain everything that happened. Another strange wrinkle in the case involves a classic science fiction anthology TV show called The Outer Limits. Several episodes of that show feature entities and scenarios that feel eerily similar to some of the things Barney and Betty Hill recalled during their hypnosis session, leading some critics such as Martin S. Kottmeyer to suggest that Barney may have unknowingly mixed up memories of watching the TV show with his own memories under hypnosis, and in some cases the evidence is pretty damning. In one episode titled The Bolero Shield, an alien creature was featured with eyes that seemed to strikingly resemble the ones that Barney drew under hypnosis. In another episode titled The Invisibles, humans fall victim to a species of alien parasites through a surgical procedure that is eerily similar to the probing described by Barney in his hypnotic state, which could have influenced his telling of the events if he'd seen it. But the most similar of all is an episode entitled The Children of Spider County, where 4 men are kidnapped by another alien, which again bore a striking resemblance to the one that Barney described and sketched. The similarities to the episode don't even stop with the design of the creature. It's a major plot point in the episode that the characters, who all belong to outcast groups, are ambushed by the aliens while in their car, which crashes as a result of the incident. Skeptics suggest that it's more than possible that Barney could have seen any of these episodes, which were released in the month before one of his hypnotic testimonies, and had his recollections influenced by what he'd seen. Though for whatever it's worth, Betty Hill claimed that the couple had never watched an episode of The Outer Limits, so the faint possibility exists that it was pure coincidence. Others have sought to find some sort of psychological consensus for the alien abduction phenomenon. Richard J. McNally, a Harvard psychologist, said, "The alien abduction phenomenon, in my opinion, shows how sincere, non-psychotic individuals can develop beliefs about and false memories of incredible experiences that never happened." One explanation for how this could work comes from Christopher French, a psychologist specializing in human experience related to the paranormal, who said, "What we see and hear, especially under less than ideal observational conditions, can be heavily influenced by our prior beliefs and expectations. This phenomenon seems consistent with how Betty and Barney subjectively experienced their supposed encounters. Betty, who was open-minded and excited by the concept of meeting aliens, had an overall more pleasant experience with said aliens. Her prior biases informed her present experience, even down to being able to understand and extensively converse with the aliens. Barney, on the other hand, was a World War II veteran who was also rendered far more cautious by his history of experiencing racism as a black man in 1960s America. He had difficulty understanding the aliens and even said that the leader reminded him of Adolf Hitler, a far cry from the friendly interstellar conversationalist that Betty had met. Memory is highly fallible and can easily be affected by a huge number of factors that may have been working against the Hills on the night when they believed they encountered an alien race in the White Mountains. Some of the more modern analyses of the event, while still casting a sympathetic light on the Hills, suggest that the abduction could have been a kind of shared psychological fantasy that reflected the couple's subconscious feelings about race in America. As one of the aforementioned rare interracial couples of the era, as well as active civil rights activists and advocates in 1961, it's fair to say that the couple likely experienced their fair share of racism, particularly Barney, who also seemed the most traumatized by the event. In his book, The Abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, Alien Encounters, Civil Rights, and the New Age in America, historian and author Matthew Bowman states, "When Barney is hypnotized and recovers all these memories, the language he uses is really colored by fear of racial persecution." In the hours of hypnosis footage taken by Dr. Simon, it's undeniable that Barney was on edge with the fears of racial persecution in Canada, playing into his already anxious disposition. Just as MacDonald had hinted at decades earlier, Barney's stress and anxiety around the events of the trip, also felt by his wife, may have colored his perception of the events. In this reading, the encounter seems to be a kind of shared stress-induced mental breakdown, which left the couple with a host of traumatic false memories. Bowman isn't alone in this assessment. Christopher Bader, a professor of sociology at California's Chapman University, said of the incident, quote, "You have a biracial couple at a time where obviously it was not easy to be a biracial couple. Look what those aliens were, a mixture of black and white. I find that very meaningful. Studies have shown that chronic anxiety can make people more susceptible to hallucinations. So there is some scientific basis for suggesting that the continued stress of being a politically active interracial couple in 1960s America, fused with the stress and sleep deprivation of a long drive and a late night, could have resulted in a 2-hour split from reality. Though of course this would do little to explain certain physical effects, like the shiny marks on the back of the car. One thing that can be said about the Betty and Barney Hill case is that it had a powerful impact on culture. From movies and TV shows to the field of ufology itself, the incident inspired the 1975 TV movie The UFO Incident, which may have had an incredibly uncreative name but featured Darth Vader himself, James Earl Jones, as Barney Hill. It was also a pivotal piece of inspiration behind alien-focused TV shows like Dark Skies and, of course, The X-Files, which is credited with restarting the alien craze in the 90s. In a strange and funny coincidence, the UFO incident may have paid the UFO craze forward in the real world too. Not long after the movie aired on television, a 22-year-old logger named Travis Walton claimed to have been abducted by aliens for 5 days, a claim that he soon spun into not only successful media appearances, but its own movie adaptation, 1993's Fire in the Sky. The Travis Walton abduction incident, unlike that of the Hills, is widely accepted to be a hoax perpetrated by Walton and his co-conspirators for personal gain. It's hard to even say where we'd be without that incident in the White Mountains. But what is the truth of the iconic Betty and Barney Hill case? The first true alien abduction, or just another fabrication spun from one strange and inexplicable night? Now check out Soviet Union declassified UFO encounters revealed, or watch this instead.